Welcome. Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its works for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen. Manningham Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people as the traditional owners of the land and waterways now known as Manningham. Council pays respects to elders past, present and emerging, and values the ongoing contribution to enrich and appreciate the cultural heritage of Manningham. Council acknowledges Australia's First Peoples as the traditional owners of the land and waterways across country and encourages reconciliation between all. Manningham Council also values the contributions made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. I welcome all members of the public who have joined us in person and online to observe tonight's proceedings. I also recognise our former councillor. No, I thought not here. Okay. If former councillors do arrive, I will acknowledge them then. I would also like to advise that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice and/or image is broadcast by council. No additional recording of the meeting is permitted without council's consent. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of the motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors can join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendment and supplementary motions. I would like to draw your attention to item 7 on tonight's agenda. Public question time provides people with the opportunity to ask questions of council. Council has allocated 30 minutes for question time, and the process for public question time is set out in our governance rules. Questions may be received prior to the start of the meeting to be asked. Where we receive advance notice of a question in accordance with our governance rules, we will then provide a verbal response to the question at our meeting. Questions we receive just prior to the meeting may be taken on notice if we don't have the information available to provide a meaningful response. If this happens, you will be provided with a written response to your question within 10 working days. Our governance rules provide that we will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and up to 4 questions on any one issue. These rules will be enforced to ensure a broad range of topics and perspectives can be heard during question time. When it is your turn to ask a question, I will ask you to come forward to the lectern in the gallery. After you ask your question, you will have 2 minutes to make a brief statement. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to council through our normal channels. To ensure the efficient conduct of our meeting and a maximum participation during question time, all question and answers shall be brief as possible and no discussion will be entered into. Councillors and the gallery are reminded that question time is to be conducted in a respectful manner, having consideration for the diverse views of those present. Any disorderly conduct will be managed in accordance with our governance rules. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? No. Item 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. I have no prior notifications of conflict of interest that have been received. Would anyone like to give a notice of conflict of interest this evening? No, thank you. Item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover?
I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on July the 23rd, 2024 and the council meeting held on the 13th of August be confirmed.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Do I have a seconder for the motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Kleinert, did you want to speak to that? Councillor Laura Mayne, did you? If there are no speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5, presentations. Item 5.1, passing of Robert Spargo. Councillors, it's with deep sadness that I must inform you of the recent passing of Robert Spargo. Robert was a former corporate manager of finance for the City of Doncaster and Templestowe for more than 6 years throughout 1988 and to 1994. And in 2005 to 2014, Robert returned to the City of Manningham for a further 9 years of service. During these years, Robert held the roles of Manager of Finance, Chief Financial Officer, and a member of the executive team. Throughout his career, Robert was highly regarded professional in the government and public financial administration, and provided his expertise and leadership ensuring Manningham's long-term financial stability. Do I have a mover for the motion?
Mayor, I move that Council place on record its sadness at the recent passing of Mr Robert Spargo, record its appreciation for the contribution by Robert Spargo to the Manningham Council and the broader community, and extend its sympathy and condolences to Mr Spargo's family during this difficult time.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Goff. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, I have to say, I think that probably more than anyone else, Rob Spargo was responsible for the strong financial position that the City of Manningham finds itself in today. He joined the City of Doncaster Templestowe in 1988, did 6 years in very senior finance roles, and then left just after all of the amalgamations and the creation of Manningham. There was an amusing line at today's funeral where he was a very positive and happy guy, and his family never ever heard him swear except when talking about Jeff Kennett. So the issue of council mergers and mandatory 20% cuts in rates and compulsory competitive tendering, it was a really tough time for the professional officers in that time, and he did 6 years then, and then came back as the CFO in 2005 after a period at Moonee Valley and with some other largely not-for-profit sectors. And I worked with him here as a councillor from 2008 to 2012, and he was fantastic. And I think it was an absolute thrill for Rob and his friends and supporters when in 2012 he was awarded the Public Sector CFO of the Year award by the Financial Review. That was a coveted prize, and I can tell you he worked incredibly hard during that time. There were a lot of complicated issues in that term. He was absolutely professional, a good sense of humour, really solid advice, and he was an absolute honour to work with. So I went to the funeral today. It was a beautiful service over in Eltham. Rob spent much of his life living in Monty, so he was never far away. He'd whiz over in his MX-5 and come to work. He loved cars. He probably should have been an engineer listening to today. He loved doing woodwork and making go-karts for his grandkids, but certainly at a professional level, I really do think that we should acknowledge his sterling service on the financial management and good governance at council, and wish the best to Carolyn, his wife of more than 50 years, and his 4 children, Janine, Catherine, Mark and Lauren, and their 5 grandchildren. So, Vale, Rob Spargo.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Jeff Goff, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I can recall the return. I wasn't around at the start of Rob's career at Manningham or Doncaster and Templestowe, but I certainly was for the second stint that he had here. And as a leader in our financial areas, he was a very well-respected person at Manningham by all councillors. He, at his heart, did have that financial sustainability model for the future in his mind at all stages, and at many times he did try to find creative ways to sort of raise some money and things, and some of them worked, some of them didn't, but he always had that mind that we can't do things if we don't have money at local government, and we need to be responsible with what we do have. And that was probably ingrained into most of the people, and that's where the appearance, we did have the indicators before, but he would always be pushing the indicators that the state government and other people would give for financial viability, and we were very careful to watch that any of those measures didn't start deteriorating to ensure that our sustainability was of utmost quality. And I think the people of Manningham, throughout the time I've been a councillor, can be rest assured that the financial viability and the spending of this council has always been within order, and we haven't exposed our community to debt, which is just a waste of money being piled up to pay off. We are not in that position, and very proud of doing what we've done over the time with that. And he was a person within that realm. He also was a person that looked for people for the future. So, Kevin Eyre was working with him. He was always on about, I suppose, educating other people in the areas and promoting, and he left a very good legacy at Manningham. And still today we've continued that effort within our way in which we spend money here. So we will miss him. He was a very personable person, a fun person to be around, and he could actually, I know that, but yeah, we need to do this, Jeff. So he was a great person.
Thank you, Councillor Gough. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? If there are no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of our motion for the passing of Robert Spargo, thank you. Item 5.2, Acknowledgement of Manningham Olympians. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge 4 of our Australians 2024 Paris Olympians who all hail from the city of Manningham. That is Brendan Smith. He's the men's swimming 400 metre individual medley. We have Abby Caldwell for women's 800 metre athletics. We have Stephanie Radcliffe, who was women's athletics hammer throw participant. And I would like to send our congratulations to all their retrospective achievements and say that you should be so proud. I would also like to acknowledge Lena Lee, who will be competing in the table tennis at the upcoming Paralympics, which commences on the 29th of August. Good luck, Lena. Item 6, petitions. 6.1, petition for the safety concerns from the open roadside drainage along Omar Street, Templestowe Lower. Do I have a mover?
Mayor, I move that the petition with 14 signatories requesting council to resolve the outlined issues by budgeting, planning and scheduling roadworks to install drains, create concrete curbing and complete nature strips along Omar Street, Lower Templestowe from properties 6 to 18 Omar Street be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you. That was Councillor Michelle Client for the seconder. Councillor Stephen Mayne, did you want to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Michelle Client, would you like to speak to the motion? With no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's been carried, so we've accepted that petition. Item 6.2, petition objecting to the proposed development at 2 Brennan Avenue, Doncaster, PLN 22/0537, and at 370 to 380 Manningham Road, PLN 23/0344. Do I have a mover of the motion? Thank you. Councillor Deirdre Domonte.
Madam Mayor, I move that the petition with 28 signatories objecting to the proposed development at 2 Brendan Avenue, Doncaster, PLN 22/0537, and at 370 to 380 Manningham Road, PLN 23/0344, be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Councillor Del Monte, did you want to speak to the motion?
Just very briefly, Madam Mayor, I understand a decision has not been made on either application. However, officers have received these objections, I should say, and will take them into consideration when making a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Conlon, did you want to speak to the motion? With no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. And that's carried unanimously, therefore that petition has been lodged. Item 6.3, petition against the construction of 13 units/townhouses at the entrance to Brennan Avenue, Doncaster. Do I have a mover for the motion?
Madam Mayor, I move the motion that the petition with 27 signatories objecting to the construction of 13 units or townhouses at the entrance to Brendan Avenue, Doncaster, a narrow no-through street at 2 Brendan Avenue, 4 three-storey townhouses PLN 22/0537 and 378 to 380 Manningham Road, Service Road, 9 three-storey units, PLN 23/0344, be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Councillor Deirdre Del Monte, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Lightbody, would you like to speak to the motion? If there's no speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Unanimously, thank you. And that petition will be lodged. Item 6.4, petition proposing the amendment to the Councillor Code of Conduct, February 2021. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne.
I move the petition with 12 signatories requesting Council to add under Section 3, My Commitment, a clause stating to embrace, uphold and respect the Commonwealth of the Australian Constitution Act 1901 be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Andrew Conlon. Councillor Laura Mayne, did you want to speak to the motion? Councillor Andrew Conlon, did you want to speak to the motion? If there are no speakers, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. That petition has been lodged. Item 7, public question time. We have received several questions for tonight's council meeting. Anyone who has registered a question with council will have the opportunity to read out their question or to choose to have their question read out by our CEO. I will call upon those who have registered their questions to come forward to the lectern in the gallery. Our first question has been submitted by Jackie Turpie on behalf of Manningham Bowls Group. Jackie, if you're in the gallery, would you please come to the lectern to ask your question? Jackie, you will have 2 minutes to make a brief statement to provide context to your question.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Turpie and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Manningham Bowls Group in reference to the amendment recently inserted into the Outdoor Sports Infrastructure and Allocation Policy to include the provision for a covered green for lawn bowls. We're submitting our question for 3 major reasons. Number 1, in order for the proposed dome over a bowling green at Mullum site or any other site to be fit for purpose, we believe that the true and total cost is likely to be closer to 2.5 million, not the budgeted 1.4 million. This would mean that both parties would need to contribute around 1.25 million, or alternatively, that the ratepayer may need to contribute 1.8. The items which need to be included in the project costs are detailed in the background notes supplied, which we hope you've had a chance to read. Number 2, we also believe that going ahead with the proposed project as it stands could severely disadvantage the viability of other clubs in the LGA and actually result in lowering the area's bowls participation rate. Again, the details are in the background notes supplied. We're concerned, number 3, we're concerned that there are major logistics issues with the proposed site. Again, details are in the background notes. Our question is, since we're concerned that the proposal as it stands is underfunded, if the true and total cost may be approximately 2.5 million, and since there are a number of major logistical problems with the site proposed, since the ratepayers have been asked to invest what's likely to be 1.25 million or up to 1.8 million, and since the alternative proven and far lower cost methods already exist to increase bowls participation, will the council please reject what could be an uneconomical and unjustified proposal to spend a large amount of ratepayers' money?
Thank you, Jackie. That's time. Would you like to ask your question that you've lodged in the papers?
Yep. Will the council please reject what could be an uneconomical and unjustified proposal to spend a large amount of ratepayers' money for what may be a poor result and a negative outcome for bowls in our LGA?
Thank you for your
Thank you.
question. I will ask Lee Robson, Director of Connected Communities, to respond to your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Jackie, and thanks also for the comprehensive information that you've included as background. The draft policy that will be discussed by Council later this evening seeks to establish a framework and standards to guide any future development of outdoor sporting facilities, and that includes lawn bowls. In terms of cost, the ultimate cost of a covered green will be subject to further analysis, including a detailed design process involving qualified industry specialists to ensure it meets required design standards and best practice. Once that's been achieved, we'll be in a better position to know what the expected cost is. The provision of a covered bowling green is consistent with the strategic direction of Bowls Victoria, who have advised of significant participation growth based on similar case studies and research when that's been provided in other parts of metropolitan Melbourne. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Eric Vagono on behalf of the Templestowe Bowling Club. Eric, if you're in the gallery, could you please come to the lectern to ask your question? Eric, you'll have 2 minutes to make a brief statement to provide context to your question.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Because I've got to be near the props. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the...
Sorry, Eric, we'll just move the microphone so we can actually, because it's recorded, you need to be on. Yep.
And thank you for this opportunity. We have for some years as Templestowe Bowling Club been changing our focus to become more community orientated and become the go-to club. To assist us in this area, we have 2 main areas of interest associated with the draft proposal. One is lighting of the green and 2, replacement of the ditches. Firstly, if we talk about lighting of the green, I just want to show these 2 bowls to you. And as an example, when you are bowling in the evening, it is very difficult to aim in between these 2 bowls. Because of the no light, artificial lighting is as good as Mother Nature, which is surround lighting, so to speak. What you need to do is make sure you maximise the opportunity for the players. Unfortunately or fortunate, depending how you look at it, community bowlers need more assistance. And for that reason, our proposal is that we increase the lux rating of the green, should we be granted the opportunity to have lights fitted, to 200, with a dispersion rate of no more than 5%. The other area that we're interested in is our ditches. Ditches are the gutters around the green. Our green, for some reason, which we don't know, has concrete, timber bolted to the concrete, concrete bolted to the timber. Unfortunately, the timber has decayed significantly and is posing a safety hazard. Just to show what happens is, with the slightest movement,
Thank
And
you,
that's
Eric.
the
That's your
moment.
time. Would you like to ask your question?
yes,
Thank you.
it's a safety hazard. My question is, can the council confirm the lighting policy will be reviewed in the light of above statement and provision be added to the draft policy to accommodate the replacement of bowling green ditches at council allocation of 100%?
Thank you for your
Thank you.
question. I'll refer that to Lee Robson, Director of Connected Communities, to respond.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks for the demonstration as well. The draft policy, as you would have seen, includes floodlighting for bowling greens in accordance with the Australian standard, and it stipulates that 100 lux is the level for district level facilities such as the Templestowe Bowling Club. The Australian standard indicates that this is suitable for after-hours use, including training and competition. The draft policy also notes that should the Australian standards change over time, that council will automatically upgrade alignments and new infrastructure to the amended standard. With regard to the ditches, understand your concern around that. At the moment, and what's proposed to continue in the policy is the replacement of bowling greens, including the ancillary infrastructure such as ditches, as is shown in the policy as a shared 50% council, 50% club contribution. However, we do understand your current concerns. Officers will be in touch with your club to discuss the current issues with the ditch, particularly as they represent a safety issue, and look at the surrounds to determine what further assistance can be provided. So we'll be in touch, Eric, and thank you for raising that issue.
Thank you. Our next question is from Mel Shield on behalf of Donvale Bowling Club. Mel, if you're in the gallery, would you please come to the lectern to ask your question? And you will have 2 minutes to make your brief statement to provide context to your question.
Okay. I'll read the question out first. Good evening. I'll read the question out first and then I'll put a little bit of an explanation why we're asking it. In the proposed new outdoor sports infrastructure and allocations policy, the funding of a covered green is conditional on broader community access being available. Donvale Bowls Club has a long-standing history of providing broad community access to our bowling facilities and programs to a diverse range of community groups and non-members. With improved facilities, we are committed to significantly enhancing that access and participation in a wide range of activities. Could you please provide specific details on the Council's expectations for broader community access in this policy? What criteria or metrics will be used to assess whether the access provided meets the Council's requirements? In terms of just some examples of things we do now, just to flesh out why we asked this question, we have strong support, just with our tendency of the DBC or Donvale Bowls Club to do this initiative. We think it'll be good for the whole Manningham Bowls Clubs, in our opinion. The things that we do in our club at the moment, we have weekly schools programs. We want to increase the certainty of bowling with a covered green. We already have programs with Heatherwood and EMDA, and Donvale Christian College comes along. RMIT and 52 Taiwanese teachers came for bowling earlier this year. RMIT would like to have those sort of programs on a regular basis with us. Sorry, I should say yearly. Barefoot bowling Friday nights, we have somewhere around about 40 to 130 each night. That's open to the public through the summer months. We've done U3A for about 20 years and it's continuing today. We've raised $2,000 for breast cancer and also $2,000 for Warrandyte Cricket Club. Managing parking for Warrandyte Community Market monthly from 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. That takes about 12 of our members. Run weekly events where visitors are welcome both in winter and summer. Corporate functions, we've got Warrandyte Football Club volunteers coming shortly. We're having a fairly cheap night for them because they're volunteering for football clubs. So they're just an example of things we do. So we just like to understand what you mean.
Thank you for your question. I'll again refer that to Lee Robson, the Director of Connected Communities, to provide a response.
Thank you, Mel. And as you point out, community access, as it's outlined in the policy, is very similar to what your club is already doing. It's looking to provide access to non-members of a club to maximise participation opportunities and community benefit. And it would include things such as you're already doing, such as barefoot bowls, school programs and casual hire or similar. All those things that are designed to enhance participation and access to the facility. The specific details of what that looks like and how it will be measured would be negotiated as part of any future funding agreement and lease agreement to be developed in collaboration with you as a key stakeholder. Thanks, Mel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Vineta Grievous and Sia and George Grievous. Vineta and Sia and George, if you're in the gallery, would you please come to the lectern to ask your question? I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll read those questions on behalf of the submitters. The first question is, what is the Council's response in relation to residents' concerns expressed in petition and written objections emailed to Council? And I'll just note they are the planning petitions that we received tonight. And the second question I'll also ask on their behalf is, what is the Council's position regarding 2 Brendan Avenue plus major easement on 374 Manningham Road, Doncaster? Also, how is Council addressing the driveway on plan, plus its floors, plus overlooking / blocking north plus east sun to the entire property?
Thank you for that question. I'll refer that to Andrew McMaster, Director for City Planning and Livability, to respond.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mr and Mrs Grievous, for your questions. Both planning application PLN 230344 for the construction of 9 3-storey dwellings and alteration of access from a road in a Transport Zone 2 at 378 to 380 Manningham Road, Doncaster, and PLN 220537, which is for the construction of 4 3-storey dwellings and alteration of an access to a road in Transport 2 at Brendan Avenue, Doncaster, were recently advertised, as you are aware. Objections to both of those applications have been received from the community, and officers will now undertake an assessment of those applications against the provisions which are contained in the Manningham Planning Scheme. This will include a detailed assessment against Res Code and any content of the objections that have been received. The assessment will also review concerns raised in your second question, such as drainage and easement concerns, access and vehicle movements, overlooking and overshadowing. As a result of the assessment, a report will be prepared which will make a recommendation to either refuse or support the application from here.
Thank you for that response. Our next questions are from Meg Downey. I believe Meg is not in the gallery, therefore I'll pass those to the CEO to read.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start off with the first question. It has been identified that the existing site of the Park Orchards Community House and Learning Centre is not suitable for the new build. That additional land in Park Orchards needs to be purchased. The adjoining property at 576 Park Road is currently for sale for $1.4 million. Council failed to buy it in 2015. Why has Council not taken the opportunity to buy it this time? So in relation to property acquisition matters, they are by nature confidential matters and are not discussed publicly. However, it is acknowledged the need for a new Park Orchards Community House and Learning Centre remains a priority. It's indicated in Council's Community Infrastructure Plan, and officers are continuing to identify the best way forward. We look forward to working collaboratively with the Park Orchards Community House Committee of Management to find solutions, including joint advocacy efforts to secure state government funding for a redevelopment. Thank you for the question. The second question is around FOMDAC. FOMDAC is happy to host a meeting in September to bring the dog-owning community together to present a list of possible sites, and this is for grant funding by the state government for dog parks. Aranga Reserve has proved to be a great success and the model for an off-leash dog park. Is Council prepared to work with FOMDAC to identify what community wants before presenting unsuitable option proposals?
Thank you for that first question, your response, and the second question. I'll refer the second question to Andrew McMaster, Director of City Planning and Livability, to provide a response.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mrs Downey, for your question. Council is planning to apply for grant funding as part of the new and improved dog parks round 2. The program allows each council in Victoria to apply for one project, and Manningham will apply for funding to improve the facilities at Aranga Reserve in Doncaster East. This will include provision for improved pathways, lighting, shelter, and an agility course, subject to community consultation on the project. The grants must be submitted by the 14th of October, and we will only find out if we are successful in early 2025, given the grant is open to all 79 councils across Victoria. If we are successful in receiving the funding, we will work with the community, including FOMDAC, to develop plans for the site, and we'll keep the community updated as we know more. Council was successful in receiving funding from round 1 of the state government's new and improved dog parks program, and we will be delivering a project at Warrandyte Reserve, Warrandyte, and Burgundy Reserve, Doncaster, as part of this program. Those projects are scheduled to be delivered by the first half of 2026, with the first round of public consultation on the concept plans closing on Monday, the 12th of August. The majority of that feedback on those projects has been supportive. Council will continue to involve the community and keep them updated as the projects progress. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. That's public question time at close. So item 8, admission of urgent business. There are no items of urgent business. Item 9, planning permit applications. Item 9.1, we have a planning application, PLA 23/0020 for the amendment of the planning permit PL 12/00747 at 659 to 671 Doncaster Road, Doncaster. And for planning permit PL 12/099747 was issued for residential hotel, trade supplies, restricted retail, and included apartments, alterations to a road zone 1, display of business identification signage, liquor licence for residential hotel. Do I have a mover for the motion?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Romain. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleiner. Councillor Romain, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this motion concerns an amendment of our existing planning permit for that big empty block next to the Doncaster Bunnings, just next door to us here at the Civic Centre. So this permit has a history, that's for sure. It was first issued in October 2013, so over 10 years ago, had amendments in both September 2016 and June 2019, and then was extended in June 2023. So in summary, this planning permit is for mixed-use residential facility, and the proposed amendment concerns improvements and additions to this existing permit. So there are a variety of changes, but I'll just provide a brief overview. So this amendment includes complete architectural revamp that improves overall aesthetics and design features, reduced overall heights and increased tower setbacks. So improved daylight access, car park layout and access points, and the addition of a childcare facility and function centre, which are great. So overall, I'm glad to see these improvements to the in the amendment. And do think that it will provide better community outcomes compared to the existing permit. finally, I'd love to thank the officers for all their tireless work they do behind the scenes, putting together this report and working towards this improved permit with, the team. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, this is a plan that's now before us. The original approved plans had 2 towers. So when I look at the old design compared to the new design, this is much more, I think it's aesthetically much nicer than what was originally proposed and was approved. It really does fill that quadrant. It works nice, I think, with the Mercure, the Bunnings, and this part to just, yes, like Councillor Mayne said, better than what is currently there. When I look back at initially Bunnings coming to Doncaster, it was like, who's going to go to Bunnings in Doncaster? And yet every time I go there, it's very vibrant, and you look and think, it's hard to think what was there or what could be there. This meets many requirements and has worked, the developer has worked much with council officers to be sympathetic to the area, to its look. It could be, because of its zoning, much more greater in its build. So I do believe this is really a win-win. If it was, 2 towers were approved. If you took that to VCAT, it would just, definitely pass through. So I think when we look at amenity and that area, it is the growth area. It is zoned for this sort of thing. It's great that it's got quite a mix. And, in much, that residential hotel vibe, which we have so many people travelling from overseas here to visit family, it brings people able to be closer where they can't necessarily stay with family because of the nature of where they live in the Doncaster Hills. So overall, I think the officers have worked really hard to get the best outcome that we could get, and I think it's actually, I think it's quite a nice design, lots of windows. It just doesn't look bulky and stark, but again, it's all subjective. But as far as, not everyone would necessarily feel that way, but I think what's come to us, having gone through the rigour, a long rigour and process, endorsing this is would be the right thing to do.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I completely agree with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Kleinert's comments. And I just thought, given the passing of Rob Spargo, just to throw in one little bit of historical context, is that this site was put together when there was the Bunnings versus Woolworths Masters land grab war. And Bunnings spent $26 million on 6 parcels of land, and the smallest one was a little road reserve laneway that the council owned. And our very deft staff got in there and said everyone gets the same per square metre amount when they sell, and $500,000 fell out of the sky to council, which made our then CFO Rob Spargo very happy when this parcel was put together. We weren't expecting getting $500,000 for a little road reserve. It's great that Bunnings have actually delivered, and with the Mercure, and this development will obviously finish out the site after what's already been a 14-year saga with a big history. But I agree with the previous speakers, these are really good tweaks, and I just wish the developer the best of luck in completing this really important, diverse, mixed-use proposal on Doncaster Hill.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Did the mover would like to close? No. If there's no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 10, City Planning. Item 10.1, Council submission to Plan Victoria at the draft housing targets. I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Deirdre Del Monte. Councillors, I will take the opportunity to speak to this motion. As you know, we are well prepared for growth within the municipality. We have been out to the community regarding our residential strategy and found out that our community have what their views are on proposed growth for Manningham. So our draft residential strategy came out with the increase of 8,200 new dwellings by 2023. And it looked at the needs of our community in terms of accessibility, in terms of housing choice, in terms of housing livability. And in particular, we heard from the community about protecting the neighbourhood character of the areas which they choose to live in while accommodating growth of different residential built form. The Plan Victoria submission with the draft targets of 39,000 dwellings by 251 is a huge increase, approximately about 76%. Therefore, can I encourage the community to have a really close look at Plan Victoria and to make their submissions, as they did to our residential strategy, about what is important to them, about accommodating growth, but protecting the amenity in which we live in. In particular, as we plan for growth, councillors, we need to think about the infrastructure that is required to support that growth and ensure that the planning targets meet and incorporate the infrastructure which we have. So where we have growth, we have accessibility to employment as well as universities or for education, that we have good transport networks, we have drainage infrastructure, and that we prepare and plan for growth in a responsible way. So therefore, can I ask the community to engage with Plan Victoria and to look at our submission to Plan Victoria's housing targets? Councillor Del Monte, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and well said. I just want to put these housing targets in context. So the state government's target of 39,000 new homes by 2051 versus Manningham Council's target of 8,200 homes by 2036. So Manningham Council's target looks at 683 new homes per annum versus the state government target of 1,444 homes per annum. And Manningham Council's target has been developed within context of planning authorities and looking at growth demographics. I also want to put this in the context of Manningham. So we know that a very precious part of Manningham is our green wedge, parts of Wonga Park and Warrandyte and parts of Park Orchards and Don Vale. And there are parts of Manningham, because it's very precious, that can't accommodate the growth. So then you look at the other part of Manningham, of Bulleen, Templestowe, Doncaster East, Lower Templestowe, that will be put on pressure to accommodate this growth. And so while these are Manningham-wide targets, you think about 1,444 homes per annum, we all know where they're going to be developed, and they're going to be targeted around those suburbs that are already, in my view, and perhaps I'm conflicted because I'm a ward councillor in that area, but in my view are already taking on a huge load of development. So I applaud what our officers have put together in these draft housing targets. Our officers looked, as the Mayor said, around public transport and accessibility, looked at roads. They looked at the cost to council of maintaining roads and footpaths to take on this amount of growth. They looked at other infrastructure projects. We've got a planning permit that was approved for the Yarra Valley Water recycling water treatment plant in Tram Road. That's a multi-million-dollar project required to support Doncaster Hill and recycled water going to Doncaster Hill. These are all the projects that are required to support this increased level of growth. And I think our officers have done a really good job in pointing out the additional infrastructure needs, notwithstanding things that are outside of council's control around schools and all those other facilities required to support this. So I think it's a fantastic, well-balanced piece of work that the officers have put together, looking at transport, infrastructure, economics, jobs, planning, the layout of Manningham, livability, etc., that looks at responsible, moderate-paced growth rather than those housing targets set by the Victorian Government. And I'd like to echo
Thank
the
you,
Mayor's
Councillor Beaumonte.
words. Please review this. No, I was just going to say, I appreciate the Mayor saying we should be reviewing this.
Do I have any speakers against the council's submission for Plan Victoria and the draft housing targets? Do I have any other speakers for the council's submission? Councillor Thomas Lightbody.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd like to, echo everyone else's comments. 39,000 more houses is quite a lot. And as you said, it's 76% increase. To put that in perspective, if you assumed an average dwelling takes about two people in Melbourne, that's an additional 78,000 people that would potentially live within Melbourne by Manningham in 2051, which is quite a lot of people, and we are in need of a number of services with our current population. I think we lack a fixed rail line. Everyone knows Doncaster Rail. It's been a thought being thrown around. Studies have been done over the years, many decades. I think since 1890 was the first time it was proposed, and we still don't have it yet. And this report is amazingly well done. So even if you are not even that interested in housing, if you just want to know about Manningham, this is a great report to read. It talks about all the services and infrastructure we currently have, things we might need in the future, and it does highlight that if we do, achieve this housing target, which I'm not sure many councils would even be able to achieve their housing targets that have been put out by the state government, we would need a significant improvement to our waste system. We'd need heaps more open space so that everyone has place to be active and enjoy their life in Manningham. We'd need more health facilities. We'd need more schools, all this other infrastructure that goes along with having a large population. I think one of the biggest things that's concerning is transport issues in Manningham. As I said before, we don't have a fixed rail line. We don't really know exactly where the suburban rail loop station is going to go or whether it's going to eventuate in the future. And we need, better buses, more frequent buses. We probably do have some of the best buses in Melbourne, but they're still not quite good enough yet. We need them to be more frequent, more direct, and taking people to the destinations where they want to go. So I think it's probably concerning, and the report outlines that it's concerning that the state government has released these targets or imposed these targets without any actual commitments to the supporting infrastructure that would need to be funded to accommodate these people. And I think that's entirely separate to the whole issue of council's role as a statutory planning body. I mean, we've got our statutory planning application activity quarter report coming up next, which outlines quite clearly that we are meeting our obligations at present to, approve applications that meet the planning scheme. But we tonight have approved a large application.
Councillor Lightbody, that's time.
Can I have an extension?
Do I have a mover for the extension? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder for the extension? Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. All those in favour of the extension? And that's carried. You have a further 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I'll try not to waffle. I can't remember the last time I've asked for an extension. But basically, the coming up report next shows that we approve what we need to approve, and that the issue is actually that the level of planning applications that we're getting are not going to be sufficient to meet these targets. And even applications that have been approved throughout our term have not got a shovel in the ground yet. So even once an application is approved, whether a development even goes ahead in Manningham in the current economic climate is still a big question mark in itself. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done by the state government to outline how we will support these targets and how it's going to support our council and our community with the infrastructure needed if we're going to fit this many new houses in over the next couple of decades. But I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to echo Madam Mayor's comment and also my fellow councillors, Councillor Damonte and Councillor Lightbody's comments. And we all know that we already, people always commenting about the increasing numbers of the dwellings in Manningham, and just want to give you the numbers. Currently, the existing numbers of homes in Manningham is about 51,000 homes in Manningham. And we have our own housing target based on the state government's victorious future projections. That is about roughly 513 dwellings per year. And now the state government give us a target, and we just give you a figure, and that is about 1,500 dwellings per year. So that's, as our fellow councillors mentioned before, there's about 76% increase from the set target provided by the state government. This is a significant departure from the analysis undertaken by the council. And there are also other factors affect the delivery of the targets, such as the residential building material and labor shortages, and most importantly, the macroeconomic trends. There's a global trends that we cannot deny, and we all will be affected. Maybe housing systems should be more responsive to changes in demand and the needs of the community rather than ambitious targets. I believe that any set target should be achievable and sustainable. And the state government also needs to make firm commitment. I repeat, very firm commitment on infrastructure to support the exceptional growth. Council submission reflects our insights on the challenges and opportunities of accommodating the significant growth into now and into the future. We have undertaken technical analysis undertaken by Council for the preparation of the Manningham residential strategy, and it will place us in a very good position to respond to the housing targets in our submission. So I encourage everyone to have a good read of our submissions, and this is Council's obligation and for our community to provide the submission. But I also encourage every single resident. But I have heard again in approving any planning permits that we value amenity, we concern about density. So this is the time every single resident let your voice heard by the state government. Put your submission to engage.vic.gov.au. Have your say. The submission closed on the 30th of August, so you still have 3 days to submit your response to the ambitious targets.
Thank
so
you.
This is everyone's
Councillor
rights
Chen.
and obligations. Thank you.
Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Jeffcoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And look, I rise to speak to this motion because it is important for the people of our area to realise that what is actually happening is that the state government, the bankrupt state government, are going to blame local government for not coming up with the solving a housing problem that they have caused by not funding housing for so many years, by sitting on land in an urban growth boundary and not releasing it to people so that the price of each piece of land stood high, and taxing and the cost of building houses is so outrageously high that the number of applications that come in the last quarter are just dwindling off and people can't afford to actually build. So how are we going to do it? You know, they introduced the suburban rail loop, not to provide a transport system because they knew darn well at the very start there were no studies into that and it wasn't going to do anything. But what it did do for them is claimed places they could name as future stations in which the state government would then gain control over the planning area of 3 kilometre radius of diameter of that area. So they got their 3 kilometres all around all the major railway stations in Melbourne, okay? They've named one for Doncaster Hill, they got a 3 kilometre around there too. where they are the planning authority, can put whatever they like. Believe me, through this and through high immigration, we in Australia are going, and the people want to live in state areas and capital cities, mostly. We are going to find a major change of living. In the future, with all of this, it's going to be apartments. There's no other way of doing it rather than apartments. So the concept of broadacre or quarter acre or low density property is going to be more and more precious into the future. It's trying to get this change in, and of course, if we don't achieve it, it's because it's a local government's fault that it hasn't occurred. To deflect, again, the lack of strength and future thinking. If you think that doubling or putting all of these people in aren't going to mean that you can't park your car in your street, you can't do this, you can't get around, we don't have enough facilities of all of these other things, you're kidding yourself. It is a direct result of higher density living. So the nature of this area that people have chosen to come to and live and actually celebrate will change. And so we are a subject of the state government. We're not an independent level of government. And we need to respond, and we have responded in very good ways to outlining the issues in increasing...
Councillor Goff, that's time. Do I have a mover for an extension? Councillor Deirdre Day-Monte. Do I have a seconder for an extension? Councillor Andrew Conlon. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. You have a further 2 minutes, Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I've lost the train of thought. But basically, we need to actually, as a society, get a bit upset about change through stealth, change through the back door, change through focusing things like this. We need, as a community, to voice opinions and voice the disagreement with what is occurring, because it's all just blame shifting and sort of putting the issue to somewhere else. From the 80s, I don't believe we've done very much in social housing. They're putting it onto state, local government, but it's not a ratepayer's job to provide that. It's a state and federal government's job to provide that, and they haven't done it. And then it's, what do we do? We want private enterprise to do it. And now they tax them out of doing anything with land tax and all these other taxes that are going through that it makes it unviable to do it. The private enterprise aren't doing it. It is just a disgusting build-up of bad governance by the state government that we are in so much debt of 24 million a day, I believe, in interest, which is a total waste of money, an absolute total waste of every taxpayer's money in Australia. And basically, we are going to have a different future because of these rules that the state government are putting in, and we can't do that. This state government trumps what we say. They are the deciders of what happens around. And I know in certain circumstances that's important, but basically this is the start, or unless the community do get active, it can be the end of this sort of stuff, and we can be a bit more rational in where we locate.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. That's your time. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne.
Thank you, Mayor. I think an important point I want to note is that we do agree with the state's sentiment that we do need to accommodate growth. We're just concerned that the Plan for Victoria is not going about it in the most considerate and effective way that truly prioritises livability. And look, it's not an easy problem to solve. We'll be the first to admit that. It is ultimately our biggest problem that we're trying to solve long term. But we've put the work in, and we've tried to provide that strategic planning as evidenced by our livable city strategy, which we would love the state government to have a bit of a look at. So as the Mayor addressed, increased population needs to be supported. It needs to be supported by complementary community infrastructure, sustainable transport initiatives, a protected local environment, which we all love, and increased affordable housing. So my concern is that the state government is going about fixing this housing crisis and this problem with a blanket strategy that has the risk of turning Melbourne into what might become a concrete jungle. And it's ultimately lacking a bit more consideration, a bit of nuance and a bit of complexity and a bit of innovation to tackle this issue and create an outcome that's actually best for our community. So I urge the state government to consider our submissions and listen to the experts in the local government sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yeah, so I'm not a member of any political party. I'm retiring at the election, so I can probably say a few different things. I think just to put a bit of context and not to repeat what other people have said, I mean, I commend the government for at least attempting to take a long-term view. Probably challenge the forecasting that they've used and the fact that they've gone out to 2051. I think they've probably gone too far and they've come out with a bit of a shock and awe number, which, you know, frankly, I'd be surprised if it does finish, you know, even 70% to that figure. We've currently got proposals to cut international student numbers. The universities are fighting it. Like, you know, who knows just how much the federal government is going to move the dial on immigration, which is the #1 driver of population. So it was unrealistic to, I mean, the government has come out here and said, you know, they want to have plausible deniability to say, well, we consulted before they start going out and rezoning great swathes of Melbourne like they've done in Box Hill and Camberwell. But of course, it's just totally unrealistic to ask a council and a group of councillors to come up with lines on a map and rezones. I mean, were we really going to say that we're going to get rid of our 1,541 private tennis courts and put units on them? Were we really going to say we're going to go 30 stories at Doncaster Hill? You know, were we really going to say that, yes, we have got probably the world's highest percentage of open space at 18%, which is massive and something that we all enjoy from an amenity point of view. 12% of that is the state government, Warrandyte State Park, Westerfolds, etc., and 6% of that is us, Ruffy Lake Park, 100 acres, you name it. So, you know, I just throw into the mix that we are unique in the world in having 5,500 residential lots that are above an acre and have a single dwelling covenant. And that's why we have 1,541 tennis courts, private tennis courts, which is more than the whole of Sydney. So I'm not surprised it's not in here that we've said, get rid of all of that, because we represent the people who are currently here. This report is looking at the people who aren't here, the future people. And there is a housing crisis. And I don't agree with sending people to more farmland in Pakenham, living cheek by jowl on 500 square metre lots, while we're sitting here with 5,500 acre lots 12 kilometres from the city. I do think it is relevant that the North East Link is being built at 26 billion, which is going to improve the access from here, 20 minutes to Dandenong, 30 minutes to the airport. You know, it's not that far to Heidelberg Station, Box Hill Station. It is a great place to live. And I do think we will have to do our share of lifting the accommodation. And I thank them for asking. I do think there's a couple of things that aren't in there that I would mention, that we do have the 4th most valuable Westfield in the country. There is 15 million visitors a year to Westfield. So we're not just, yes, 94% of our race revenue is residential, but we are actually a bit more than just the dormitory suburb or residential.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. That's time.
I would like an extension, please, just to finish.
Do I have a mover of an extension? Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Do I have a seconder for an extension? Councillor Jeff Goff. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour, that's carried unanimously. You've got a further 2 minutes, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
And just to throw a couple of other facts in there, like we do have the Ambulance Victoria head office in Manningham. So we do have some state government head offices. We do have major corporate head offices like Ames, which owns the Nilex brand, and Tyre Power and Jones Ling. So, we have talked about some private sites in the report. We've talked about the Sonico chemical plant on Templestowe Road. If we are mentioning private sites, I will mention that the Shopping Town Hotel is the most underdeveloped site on Doncaster Hill and should obviously accommodate probably more than 1,000 if you actually were looking at where you would draw lines on a map. I mean, it's a massive site, but because they make so much money from the pokies, 18 million a year from the gamblers, they don't ever actually properly rework the site for housing because it's such a lucrative gambling den. But they're the sorts of sites that you would be working on to meet these sorts of targets. And I think we've done the right thing in saying that, in pointing out many of the problems and challenges. But I do, as I said, I do think we need to think about the next generation, the people who aren't here. And I hope they don't go too crazy with their rezoning without consulting, which is what they've done to our neighbours in Boroondara and Whitehorse. But at least they asked us. I just wish they hadn't asked us, the most impossible question you can ask a council, which is, come up with another 39,000 houses, please. I mean, it is probably the most ridiculous question I've been asked in my 12 years as a councillor. And I think the officers have done an excellent report answering the impossible question. And I just hope that the debate doesn't get toxic in an immigration context, as is happening in many other places in the world. And asking this sort of question, in my view, by the state government risks that. And so I wish they had done it in a less controversial way to manage the delicate issue of population growth in the greatest country in the world where people want to live in.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. That's time. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Andrew Conlon.
Thank you, and I agree wholeheartedly with my other councillors. But I do think the whole proposal, so I agree with our report, we've done a good job in the report, but the whole idea behind the state government is more sinister than this, than what we're thinking. I think we're getting the message that they're planning for growth. Well, I tell you what they're planning for. They're planning for a windfall gains tax. In case you don't know what that is, if your land is rezoned by the government, you will have to pay 62.5% of the uplift in that property from the date that it's rezoned, not from when you develop it. And on top of that, the federal government will then tax you, another 25% in capital gains tax. So why would anyone want to live on a rezoned piece of land? This is going to have a massive effect on people's ability to develop, for a start. I can see the long term. This is actually just a tax grab by the state government, and it should be called out for what it is. It's highway robbery, and of course they want us to rezone our land because they can blame us for all that windfall gains tax. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Do I have any other speakers? I think that's everybody who's spoken. I'm going to take the opportunity to close and summarise what councillors have said around the table. So we all commend officers on our submission to Plan Victoria. They have done lots of work in being able to accommodate growth in a responsible way. We are a unique suburb. We are one of the most livable municipalities with a balance of city and country. We are lucky to have open space and the environment which supports healthy well-being and living. Yes, to be able to accommodate growth, we will need to look at the areas that we have, which could be state or council land, and the ways to make any sort of growth and development viable would be to have exemptions to the windfall gain tax. We also need, if we're to accommodate growth, the infrastructure that supports that growth. That means that also we have the transportation so that our municipality continues to be accessible to education zones, employment zones, and has the amenity that is required. That this growth is done with consultation with local government who are successful, and we are a successful planning authority with many planning permits approved but not developed on. So the housing crisis is more than just housing targets. We also know that Plan Victoria is lacking in the principles and the criteria to make these targets, and we seek for those to be addressed so that we can have appropriate housing growth and targets to match our municipality, our infrastructure, and have a long-term view for future generations so that housing is affordable and available to all within this lovely municipality. Thank you. I will put our council submission to Plan Victoria and the draft housing targets to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 12.2, Statutory Planning Application Activity Quarter 4, April to June 2024. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Well, councillors, we were complaining about not having enough planning coming to council, and this is item 3 on planning tonight. So we've had an actual application, we've had a submission, and now we get the quarterly review. So at last, a good 3-course meal on planning. So this decision to introduce the quarterly activity report was taken by councillors working with the officers through the CEO's KPIs as a way of bringing planning to the table because it had gone so quiet, and also providing transparency to the community on, one of the most important statutory responsibilities of council, and the only area where council laws sometimes effectively become almost like judicial officers in deciding on yes or no on very important planning applications. So pleasingly, the report shows that there was a slight uptick in the number of applications received during the financial year at 883, up from 870 and 863 in the previous 2 years. But back in the day, it used to be normally above the 900 and into the thousands. So the slowdown that has seen as one metric our normal 6 million a year in subdivision tax revenue, which has fallen to around the 4 million a year in the last 4 years or so. The slowdown, which obviously feeds into the housing crisis because of the lack of new builds, is continuing, and there's no sort of dramatic evidence of a turnaround in this quarterly report. But it does show, very importantly, that 87.8% of our planning applications were dealt with on time, within the 60-day statutory requirement, compared to 67% across the metropolitan region in terms of an average. And look, there were 21 times we got taken to VCAT, 7 successful appeals, but overall, and the majority of those appeals were against refusals. So we're not just ticking yes, you can have whatever you want. We say no, we get taken to VCAT. We have got a very good planning team, and I have utmost confidence in their ability to efficiently and fairly apply the planning scheme, and I thank them for their work, and I appreciate them putting together these quarterly reports so we can display to the community exactly what sorts and types of applications are coming through, how quickly they're being approved, how we're going at VCAT, and just how this most important function of council is performing.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Jeff Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you very much. Looking at a local government perspective, it is a very good outcome here for what we've put through, probably exceeding that state average, but I don't think the state average of local government is a really high bar in the first place. And if I had something that had 10% of, if 10% of my work had to be, wasn't done on time or whatever, in another job, I'd be gone. So I'm looking at increasing even higher that lovely score of 89.7, because that leaves me at 12% that aren't done in time. And believe me, it's not just 60 days, because what happens is, as everybody knows, someone has an issue, they send you out, you got an issue from the moment you sent that out, the clock stops, the days don't count down, and sometimes it can take 2 years for a planning application to come through. These planning applications that are outside the 60 days can be a very, very long time. And I think we need to indicate in those 12% how many days over they are, because and that doesn't really account from the time someone puts an application in and gets one back, because the time is frozen. As soon as a letter is sent out, please explain on this issue, okay? So it is that the 60-day time is really good, but there's 60 days of council looking at it, not 60 days from when the application was put in that you get the answer. And I think, I'm going to put a state government point of view on now too, because we as a place add a lot of cost by holding cost for any developer to do anything by taking a long time. 2 years for a simple dual occupancy to get through, push through 3 times, it was all conforming and no objections, is a huge cost. And then you wonder if the block of land was worth $1.8 million, then you hold that for 2 years and you pay 7% interest on it. There's huge costs of holding and huge costs of building. So we can, and I know that this council will look at improving, our performance in the planning to make sure that it can get in under the statutory line, but also remember that statutory line is not 60 days. It's actually 60 days plus all the time it's taken to send a letter out and to get something back from the other side. And it'd be wonderful, Mr. CEO. This is a very good report. In local government terms, please, this is a good outcome. But in real business and real terms in society, it's not. But quite honestly, this needs to come to the July meeting before we do the annual report one. And because it is to the June, if we could get that in so that the annual report can actually reflect this figure rather than the next quarter's figure.
Councillor Goff.
Because so it'd be good to have our annual reports from June to June.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. That's your time.
Thank you.
Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any speakers for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Thomas Lightbody.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mentioned this report in the last item, which seems like hours ago. But I think one thing I did really want to talk about and forgot to talk about in the last item was affordable housing. And we have these reports coming to us now because of the state government's tax on local government, a tax on our ability to perform our role as a statutory planner and increase the number of houses and housing in our community. And a big part of that is increasing affordable housing. And if you have a look through this report and you're looking for information about how much affordable housing has increased in Manningham, you're not going to find very much information there because unfortunately the state government hasn't given us the one power we need to address the affordable housing issue, and that is to make inclusionary zoning compulsory. At the moment, we can enter into voluntary agreements with developers that are negotiated where they may provide some affordable housing units in their development. And the example I can think of off the top of my head was the Tullamore estate, and as far as I know, there's just 2. In the entire estate, 3 apartment buildings, a bunch of houses, only 2 affordable housing units, and that's because we couldn't make it compulsory. We have targets that we've set ourselves of, I think, 5% currently, and we're looking at revisiting that. But we can't do that without the powers we need. And I think the state government likes to attack councils for not solving the housing crisis. But I think state and federal governments of both sides have created this over the past decades, and they don't even provide it themselves. They ask councils to close parks or remove small slithers of council land to put housing on, but they own sites like the Gasworks on Alexander Parade, and they're not guaranteeing they're going to build affordable housing there, or they're not guaranteeing public housing there. They're proposing to demolish all the public housing towers, and there's no guarantee that any of that is going to be public housing. They say it will include 10% affordable housing, which isn't necessarily public housing. It could be housing that's owned by a non-profit organisation and managed by them, not managed by the state, and not made available to everyone. It's very unclear as to what the definition is for affordable housing, but there's no requirements for that. And even the goal that they do have there is for an additional 1,000 affordable housing units, which they're demolishing 10,000 to replace with 11,000 plus privately owned developments. So it's really telling, I think, that the state government just doesn't want to put the money where their mouth is on housing, and they're not doing the job that they should be doing, which is funding and building housing in Victoria.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? If there are no other speakers to the motion, Councillor Stephen Mayne, did you want to close? Therefore, with no other speakers, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 11, Connected Communities. 11.1, our 2024 Annual Healthy Ageing Grant Program recommendations. Do I have a mover?
Mayor,
Yep.
if I can just interrupt, sorry, Mayor. There's a suggestion, Councillor Chen, from the governance team that the recommendation where it says A, that it actually changes slightly to be really specific, that it notes the grant assessment panel's recommendation as contained within 3.1 of the report. Is that the A? That's A.
Have we got it up on there?
So if you wouldn't mind reading it out that way, Councillor Chen, that it notes the grant assessment panel's recommendations as contained within 3.1 of the report.
Yep. And councillors, I will just give Councillor Chen a moment to be able to read that as it's drafted, and then we will continue on.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, do I have a mover? Councillor Anna Chen.
All right, Madam Mayor, I move that the council notes the grants assessment panel's recommendation for the Healthy Aging Annual Grant Program for 2022-25 at item 3.1 of this report, with a total funding allocation of $80,000. B, supports the referrals of the remaining Healthy Aging Annual Grants Program budget allocation of $21,588 to the 2024-25 Senior Club Support Grant funding pool, and any senior-related application through the 2024-25 small grant rounds.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Deirdre Del Monte. Councillor Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, in the April 2023 council meeting, council made a very difficult decision not to participate in the revised aged care system funded by the Commonwealth, because to be eligible to the new contract and funding, Manningham would need to develop a competitive business that works across a larger demographic region and offers a more comprehensive range of services than was currently provided by council. It was just beyond a local government's scope and capability. According to 2021's census, 28% of Manningham's residents aged 60s and above, compared to Greater Melbourne just 20%. Manningham has an above average aging population. We acknowledge that council has an obligation to look after the well-being of our older adults, and there is now opportunity to support older adults through a range of healthy aging initiatives to help our older adults stay healthy and independent longer. Therefore, at the August 2023 council meeting, council endorsed 2 new healthy aging grants to support grassroots initiatives and senior clubs with funding for group-based activities to connect and support older adults. In the 2024-25 budget, council allocates $80,000 for the annual Healthy Aging Grant Program. The objective of this program is to respond to a specific need and enhance the health and well-being of the Manningham aging community. This program has been extensively promoted by council through council's communication channels. All applicants were offered translation and application development support. Council received 16 applications. The assessment process comprised 3 stages, and the applications were assessed by the Grants Assessment Panel, including 3 independent and skilled community members and 2 senior managers. The panel awarded the 7 applications that meet the assessment criteria and demonstrate both community and public value. The total awarded funding is $55,412. The remaining balance will be allocated to the 2024-25 Senior Club Support Grant funding pool and any senior-related applications through the 2024-25 small grants.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. That's time.
May I move extension?
Could I have a mover for an extension? Councillor Andrew Conlon. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thomas Lightbody. All those in favour of the extension? And that's carried unanimously. You've got a further 2 minutes, Councillor Anna Chen.
Just basically, small grants runs to provide additional support to grassroots initiatives for older adults within our community. Council acknowledges that some senior groups and organizations, it was their first grants application writing, and therefore the experience could be daunting. And so for those 9 applications that do not meet the assessment criteria, officers will actively work with them to support them in developing future applications. From 2025, the Healthy Aging Grant Program will be included in our annual grant program, and the categories will include community development, festivals and events, arts, healthy aging, 4 categories. In the future, we expect that our healthy aging officers will directly liaise with the senior groups and organizations to encourage further applications for healthy aging related funding applications. On a final note, I have to say there are still misinformation in our community, either unintentionally or driven by political motivations. The annual Healthy Aging Grants is one of the many council healthy aging initiatives, which I hope will defeat the misinformation or false news by some individuals in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Deirdre Day-Monte, did you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Chen for providing the background to why we have these grants, and I echo her words around hoping that the community is really clear on why some of those tough decisions had to be made and how great it is that we've got the Healthy Aging unit and continuing to use our budget to support our older adults. So thank you, Councillor Chen. And I do love the work of the Healthy Aging unit and their work in supporting our older adults, and that includes these grants. And as Councillor Chen said very well, this facilitates partnerships with our community organisations, and it's all aimed at enhancing the health and quality life for our older adults. Looking through the grant applications, there are many there, and they all centre around health and wellbeing programs to support people with Alzheimer's, learning and development programs, and community events. So I thank everyone that's submitted applications for grants, and I commend the officers in the work in putting up these grants and assessing them all. Thank you.
Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any speakers for the motion? With no other speakers, Councillor Anna Chen, would you like to close?
No, thank you. I think I have said it all.
Thank you. With no other speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 11.2, our outdoor sports infrastructure and allocation policy. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Councillor Andrew Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would love to speak to the motion. Firstly, thank you to the officers for taking on a task of combining 2 policies that were fairly disjointed into one and made it a lot more streamlined for all our users of our fantastic facilities. This policy has focused a lot on, I guess, getting community participation. It's getting away from the idea that a certain club owns a facility or whatever. It's about actually opening that up for community use. And so we see an improved floodlighting, which will be great for people who are just walking their dog at night. We see a penalty system for clubs breaching their licence agreement in terms of their future allocations. We see a mandatory usage plan, so that clubs have to outline how they're going to engage with the community and how they're going to maximise the use of their allocation. So these are all great things. And what I'm, yeah, it also, I guess it is focused on improving overall participation, both formal participation, like in organised sport, or informal, which is great, because that's, you know, on the RASAC committee, that's what we're trying to achieve. And it's, as I said, this is a great policy. This has gone through a lot of work by the officers, a lot of consultation, and it promotes, if we can get improved participation, we will get a physically healthier community. We'll get a mentally healthier community. We'll get a more connected community. And these are all great things. And what I'm really excited about is the actual regional, the upgrading of our Mullumbullen Reserve Bowls to being a regional facility. This will, and part of that is for it to, for us to help contribute to, part of that policy is for us to contribute 50% of a potential cover, which will provide an all-weather bowling green for Manningham. And this will be a fantastic outcome for all bowlers, current and future. There'll be a lot more bowlers. All the research shows that covering the bowling green increases participation. All weather will make it useful. I'm in my other job, I don't know if you know, but I'm a teacher, and I know a lot of work goes into organising sport. And I tell you what, every school we love indoor or under all-weather facilities, because you can book the bus, you can take your kids, you can play. Any other and sports that are outside, which restrict play in rain, are really problematic. And there's a whole group of kids who at these who are allocated to these teams, and everyone wants to do everything, but there's certain kids who just can't get into the teams. They go into this thing called Sport Rec, and I've supervised that Sport Rec, and one of the activities we did was go to an indoor bowls place, a 10-pin bowling place, but the kids loved it, and I can just see this all-weather green being a fantastic asset for Manningham, a fantastic way for kids to get introduced to bowls, a fantastic way for people to socially connect, because you don't have to worry about booking it if you're going to book it for some sort of social event. Is it going to rain or is it not? Whatever, you know, it's or is it going to be too hot? It provides great shade. Not only that, the covering the green. I don't know if anyone knows anything about plastics, but the synthetic turf is actually degrades with ultraviolet light, and you put a cover over it, you eliminate the ultraviolet light, and the greens will last. The synthetic green will last a lot longer, and it's a really great timing for this, because we're actually already allocated for a new synthetic green at that particular reserve, and new lights for that thing, for that new synthetic green. And so by combining this potential project, it makes it really affordable in terms of our capital outlay, and I'm sure the club will be keen to contribute. So again, I completely endorse this policy. I thank the officers for the consultation. I understand we don't have complete consensus, but consultation does not mean consensus. Consultation means we try to find everyone's view. It's our job to make a decision on the balance of those views of what's best for the community, and what we think is, what our role is in terms of making sure that we can improve the lot of our people. And I would also like to add that social isolation among seniors is one of the biggest emerging problems, and given our ageing problem,
Thank you, Councillor Connellan. That's time.
For next extension.
Do I have a mover for an extension? That's Councillor Anna Chen. Do I have a seconder for an extension? That's Councillor Laura Mayne. All those in favour of an extension? And that's carried. You have a further 2 minutes. Thank you, Councillor Connellan.
Thank you. As I said, social isolation among seniors is a real issue. And it's great the work that U3A are doing in trying to connect people. It's great what work the existing bowling clubs in Manningham are doing in terms of trying to get away from it being an exclusive pennant competition sport to being a much broader outcome. So I congratulate all our Manningham Bowls clubs for taking that on. And I believe this, like I said, this is a game changer. And I hear the concerns by the other clubs that are potentially impacted by this, but as the policy states, in order to maximise The community access, the policy stipulates that council funding towards a covered dome will be conditional on broader community access being available, i.e. to include non-tenant clubs and members. And so I think it's a great opportunity if the other clubs can look at it as an opportunity rather than a threat, because ultimately we want more people to participate in bowls, and we want more people to get connected. We want more participation in sport overall. All where the sporting facilities are the go. And how much time have I got left?
Still keep going.
Keep
Councillor
going,
Connolly,
great.
if you've still got time.
All right, here we go.
You don't have to.
Now, I had to take my kids to netball. No offence against netball players, but I've got 8 kids. So we had like netball, basketball. I would go on a basketball court any day because you don't have to worry about getting sunburnt. You don't have to worry about whether it's going to rain or not. It's fantastic. You go to netball, there's wind, there's rain, you get sunburnt, and you've got these umpires who tell you you're not allowed to argue with them as well, which I didn't like much. But anyway, the point is we need undercover facilities. We should be focusing our spending on undercover.
Councillor Connolly, that is your time.
Thank you.
Good.
Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, without extension. Thank you, Madam Mayor. The outdoor sports and infrastructure and allocations policies before us. It's gone through a consultation period of 4 weeks. There was 887 views, 208 downloads of the document, total of 36 submissions. This has come a few times to the council for better understanding, for thrashing out, to really grasp how we can move a policy forward that helps Manningham. Doesn't always help everyone, but we work the very best, and I think we've landed it quite well. 45 one-on-one interviews were held with a range of community clubs, organisations. We had interviews that covered a wide range of sport, including mainstream sports like AFL, soccer, niche sports. Variety of clubs. We talked with regards to lease and seasonal and annual allocation. It's quite an in-depth policy. Within the policy, if you look in the report, you'll see about usage plan, allocation, scoring criteria, penalty system, floodlights. Councillor Collins alluded to many of this. Floodlights, lease facilities, scoreboards, many things. One thing that I do want to highlight, because it is coming up and coming before us as we heard earlier on through the public questions. On page 119, I think it was. No, I'll go a bit further down. There's a little bit in here that I just want to be considered. Policies are a place for guidance, place for parameters. 6.2.3 as an example, and I'll take that as because of Councillor Conlon was quite shared a lot to do with bowls. 6.2.3, pending endorsement of facility standards for regional lawn bowls, design work for a covered green at Mullen Bowls facilities proposed to commence immediately in accordance with the current available budget. Delivery of the project is proposed to occur across 24-25, 25-26 financial years. Pending endorsement. There's still a lot of work to be done, a lot more investigation. This policy, this was something that was brought into the policy as multiple conversations were had with councillors, with consultation, with submissions, and this is where it is. This ultimately will come, I would say, back to council, because there will be, you've got to look at it in final detail. This hasn't
Councillor
cut it
Kleinert,
out.
that's time.
Oh, then I will ask for an extension. Oh, my goodness.
Do I have a mover for an extension? Councillor Jeff Goff. Do I have a seconder for an extension? Councillor Laura Main. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of an extension? And that's carried unanimously. Councillor Kleinert, you have a further 2 minutes.
Thank you. So pending endorsement. So this is now in there, but there will be further work. There will be further investigation, because ultimately, like Councillor Conlon said, it's about what's the benefit, the greater benefit for the more ratepayers, the future, the way that we're going. And yes, it is true when we look at covering, it is the way that you get many sports. As an example, netball. People do want to be undercover. It is the natural way that we're going. In other policies that we're endorsing to do with climate change and all this sort of stuff, we're talking about the changing of weather patterns. So though it's in there, it still will come back to council. The policy is a very good policy. It's gone through much rigour, a lot of work of officers to bring it together. And like all policies are, not 100% will like that policy. You have winners, you have people that go, I wish that was better, or I wish it was like this. I think it sits quite well. It's got some great benefits for many users right across a wide variety. Let's not look at one particular sporting, but let's look much wider across Manningham, across all our constituents, from cradle to grave. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Deirdre Del Monte.
I'd like to move an amendment, please, Madam Mayor.
I'll ask if the mover...
I was just waiting if it could go on the screen before
Yep, if you...
I read it out. So I move an amendment, Madam Mayor, that Council endorses the outdoor sports infrastructure and allocations policy with the following amendment, that the provision of a covered bowling green is changed to reflect that projects are considered as being on a case-by-case basis for consideration by Council on page 44 of the policy. Note that endorsement of this policy does not infer Council endorsement of the provision of a covered bowling green in Manningham, and requests a report be brought to Council by March 2025 outlining a summary of consultation outcomes, including with Manningham Bowls Group, individual bowling clubs in Manningham and Bowls Victoria, and project parameters including costs, maintenance, external access and commercial agreements for the development of a covered bowls green in Manningham.
Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you, Councillor Jeff Goff. Councillor Deirdre Del Monte, did you want to speak to the amendment?
Yes, thank you. And Madam Mayor, I do want to note that in moving this amendment, yes, my son is a member of Templestowe Bowling Club as a casual member. However, my comments are reflecting a wider Manningham Bowls perspective. I am concerned, councillors, that we're about to approve a policy that includes the requirement for infrastructure at a regional facility when proper consultation has not been conducted on the item. I'm not dismissing that it's a good policy. It's a very strong policy. We have to also remember that the covered bowling green was an amendment to the policy. So even in the policy document it says, further consultation is required with both Donvale Bowling Club and the Manningham Bowls Group to investigate and formalise this approach for potential inclusion in funding and licence agreements. We even just heard from Donvale Bowling Club, who's asked for further details on expectations for broader community access. The paper also says a meeting with the Manningham Bowls Group will be held following endorsement of the policy to discuss the outcomes of the Covered Bowling Greens research report and subsequent amendments to the policy. The paper also says to ensure future maintenance responsibilities are met, the establishment of a sinking fund is proposed. Full details of the arrangement are yet to be finalised. The policy is also not clear on costs. There's a lot in this report that we do not understand. I do not think that it is good governance that we are being asked to infer approval of something where we don't understand costs, licensing arrangements, maintenance arrangements, other club access and other club support, yet we're asked to be able to support a policy on this. Whenever we approve the funding of any master plan for any club of any code, we as a council always ask for the outcomes of consultation. We dive into that deeply. We always ask for project costs. We always ask for maintenance costs. This is good governance and something that we do, particularly when we're looking at spending more than $1 million. I also want to say that we've heard from Manningham's Bowl Group today, and they themselves are concerned that they've not had proper consultation on this item. Concerns you've heard even tonight is that the covered bowling green might not generate this huge increase in more bowling. As you heard from Eric, the number one factor of playing more bowls is lights. Lights and good synthetic greens, good pitches. Manningham Bowls Group has said that they believe this will be a detriment to other clubs and will absorb members. They want to understand what usage other clubs might get from this infrastructure before a policy is approved. We have to remember this is weather dependent. It's not something that we can just have a schedule for and one team can play on a Tuesday and one team can go on a Saturday. Manningham Bowls Group at this stage said to us they don't believe it's a good spend of money to get more people playing bowls, and necessarily not for the community of bowls in Manningham. So, councillors, this proposal, I'm not saying no, I'm just saying let's just take the time to properly understand the costs, properly understand consultation. Let's give the respect to Manningham Bowls Group that has joined together across the 4 clubs to provide input on bowling initiatives across Manningham as well, and I'm asking that you support my amendment for those reasons.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. Councillor Jeff Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Madam Mayor, this motion actually does just repeat the original motion, but it actually puts into context Council's position. And Council's position is that we haven't actually made a decision to actually do it. Now, I know that you've got your parameters in your policy and all the rest, but it just makes it very clear that that decision to actually do the final work is going to be made, dare I say, by a new council anyway, but it will be made into the future, and we've got everything there. So I see that this is a good clarification for transparency for the community as to, yep, we've got a statement in here about bowls. It includes perhaps exploring all of these things, but it's not an endorsement that, yes, it is going to go ahead, okay? And that really is our position. That really is our position at the moment, because we do have to do more on that. And, you know, if I started to talk about equity in sport, well, there is no equity in sport. We have thousands of people in this community that play badminton and don't have any facilities. We have people...
Point of order.
No, this is about this.
What's your... Councillor Stephen Mayne, what's your point of order?
Council owns and manages through the YMCA the Doncaster Badminton Centre 200 metres from here. And they've been displayed at other facilities as well. It's inaccurate to say that we don't provide badminton facilities, and I ask Councillor Goff to withdraw that inaccurate comment.
Madam Mayor, I never said we don't provide badminton facilities. I said we've got tens of thousands of people that require it, and we do hire a school property to play badminton in,
Councillor
which
Goff,
is not ours.
I will ask you to refrain from talking about the extra information in terms of what we do and don't do for badminton. We do... we have had
funding and policy.
We have had a report.
Mayor, I'm talking about funding and policy,
So,
and how
Councillor
we
Goff,
come up with it.
I made a call
What's the call?
that the point of order is going to stand.
Which was a point of order that was?
That the information that you said about not supporting badminton, the fact that we do support badminton in the support, and we've had a recent update on that. So that is my call. Can you please continue?
Well, I will
without
say,
that?
Madam Mayor, that we don't support enough badminton, because it is a major sport of a community that doesn't have very much sporting facility within our area. And we don't support very much table tennis, which is another sport that a lot of people have to do. And we don't support enough all of these other things. So perhaps when we look at equity in sport and how much we're spending in all, we really need to sit down and look at all the sports in the area and which ones we spend and to how much and to per capita of people that are playing it and things like that. perhaps there needs to be some sort of more equity. I actually like our facility supporting thing, but if we're going to make an issue out of one thing, and this one here is coming up saying, yeah, we will put that in our policy, but we're not saying at the moment we're building it, I think is a way forward. Because if you want to have a confrontation on which sports are funded and which aren't, then that will be brought on, Madam Mayor, because we underfund a lot of other things, and other things have never had funding. So one of the very first lessons that was taught to me when I came onto this council was, Jeff, to understand sport, there's no equity in sport. And really, it took me a long time to understand, but I do understand it is very difficult. It's one of the most difficult things because we've had so many of these policies in the years that I've been on council. I think it's about the 6th one that I've come up with, and all of them have fallen over in the 3rd year of implementation. So let's really talk factual now about this. It was talking about the amount that we were talking about,
Thank you,
not the very
Councillor
fact
Goff.
that we do.
That's time. Do I have any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
So I think we should not support 2 individual councillors, and we should support our professional officers and their recommendations. So I think it's disappointing that we didn't have a policy basis to accommodate covered bowls when there's an email from the president of the Donvale Bowls Club, Ian Bramstead, that says, previously in early 2020, we presented a proposal to the council for a synthetic bowls green with a canopy roof, etc., etc. That was 4.5 years ago. And we don't even have a policy that says how we would do it. So let's get the policy right, which is what this does. And then if people want to campaign against it and run a budget argument against it, or if it blows out, it won't get funded. Lots of things.
Point of order, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Diamante, what's your point of order?
I'm not campaigning against it, Madam Mayor. The amendment is not to campaign against it, Councillor Mayne. The amendment is to get proper information on it before making a decision.
Councillor Stephen Mayne, will you retract the campaign against it comment, please, and continue with your arguments?
It's a quote from the amendment, Mayor. It says that notes the endorsement of this policy does not infer council endorsement. So it point blank says we're not supporting it. It says we do not infer council endorsement of the provision of a covered bowling green in Manningham. So anyway, if you want me to refer, I'll withdraw it to get on with the argument.
Thank you.
To not get distracted. We lost the Yarra Valley Country Club bowls facility this term, okay? So we're down to 4. 1 is owned by the club, Greythorn, we can't do anything there. Covered green would be totally inappropriate at Templestowe, and I don't think it'd be appropriate here. There's only one site it could possibly be at, which is our premier facility at Mullumbullen. And Bowls Victoria have said there's 18 up there now. Bowls Victoria have endorsed this. I had a look at the Pakenham and Narre Warren covered bowl facilities on Sunday. Drove down, had a look at them. They are magnificent, absolutely magnificent. I'm really jealous that there are 18 other councils that have got on with this. When we think we're a premier council, and 18 others have gone ahead and got a covered green happening, and we've got a club that said, we'll give you well over $500,000, the biggest contribution from a club in the history of Manningham. We're ready to go, and we've been dragging this out for 4.5 years already. I believe in efficiency, being a business-like council, not just dragging things out for years, calling for more reports, risking delay. When you've got people who want to do something to help the community and offer to cover 50% of the cost, why would you send a signal that this is not to be encouraged? So I just think we should just stick with the professional officers. We've already delayed them. There was $389,000 in the 23-24 budget for the synthetic green conversion. That hasn't even happened because we've been faffing about. Now, tell me, in my 12 years since I first got on council back in 2008, I can't remember doing anything for bowls. You want to talk about unloved sports? Bowls. Probably the most unloved sport in Manningham. We've spent over $20 million on footy and cricket club pavilions, $11 million at Petty's Reserve for soccer. We did not do Petty's Reserve at soccer because Wonga Park Soccer Club and said, you're wasting ratepayers' money. You don't listen to, small competitors who might be jealous and say, this is a regional facility. We've grossly under-supported bowls for a long time. We should support all bowls clubs.
Point of order, Councillor Stephen Mayne. I thought that comment was defamatory, saying that other clubs are saying no because they're jealous. I think that's defamatory towards the other clubs.
I'm going to agree with that, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Thank you. Continue. Reject that.
I guess my final point is I would love to say everyone who loves bowls to get behind council investing in bowls, including councillors. The officers are backing it. We should not get in the way with a political councillor alternative reach-in that substantially changes some great progress that we've
Thank
made.
you,
The ward
Councillor
councillors work
Stephen
really hard
May,
on this, and we
that's
should
your
support
time.
the ward councillor as well.
And do I have any other speakers for the amendment? Do I have any speakers to the amendment? Councillor Andrew Conlon, you have a question?
I just have some questions around the idea that Councillor Diamonte raised about governance. My understanding is that that the caveats in the paper cover all the possibilities and effectively leave it open for the officers to get down into the detail. So I'm a bit confused because I thought governance was about sort of setting the broad ideas of the policy. We then put our faith in the officers.
Councillor Conlon, what's your question?
My question is, do we have a detailed plan about how we are going to consult with various stakeholders in terms of community allocation?
Thank you for your question. CEO, I'll refer the question to yourself.
I might have to refer that to the director in terms of the level of detail of the consultation process, which I think is a question you're asking.
If this is endorsed,
Yep.
if we endorse the original motion, there's outlined in the paper some consultation with clubs as to how other clubs would have access to that.
Yeah, there would definitely be some consultation in relation to that. I'm not sure how far we've fleshed that out, and I'd have to ask the director. I don't think we have at this point in time.
No, thank you, Andrew. We've not fleshed out that consultation, which still needs to occur, and we've not done detailed design, so we don't have very precise costings at this stage. We do have ballpark costings, but not precise costings.
So another question.
Councillor Conlon, you have another question?
So given that we don't have the final design, we don't have the final costs, this is a policy position. In typical other things, when things go, if we have a budget for it and it goes over the budget, my recollection is that it comes back to council and say, we had a budget, it's now
Councillor Conlon, what's
twice
your
as much.
question?
My question is, am I right in terms of that process, is that it'll actually come back to the council if it is supposedly over budget, if there is an underestimate of the ongoing maintenance cost, which I believe we have anyway. But anyway, that's my question is, do we have a process that council ends up approving and effectively the budget in the future? Because we don't have the final costs. All we have now is an estimate.
Thank you. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Yeah, that's correct, councillor. So if there are substantive budget changes to a endorsed project, we would have to bring that back. And obviously it just depends on the size and scale of the project in the capital works program. But ordinarily, if it's not within delegation, we would have to bring that back for formal council approval. But certainly, as you're aware, when we do have changes to the capital program, we bring that up to council often on a quarterly basis.
Councillor Conlon, you have another question?
Yep. So, for example, when we're talking about floodlights, which is we're changing our funding of that, and the Booker Court system, which is 50-50, there's a whole lot of things there that we actually don't know the costs of, which aren't identified in the policy
Councillor
either.
Conlon, what's your question?
I'm trying to understand the difference between those and what we're proposing for the covered green. Is there something different about the covered green that makes it somehow magically a different process for addressing these types of things?
Councillor Diamonte, I'll refer that to the CEO for answer.
So I just need some clarification. So are you saying, councillor, in terms of the way in which we would consult, prepare the budget and do the detailed design costings, all of those sort of things? Is that your question?
That's correct.
Yeah,
because those floodlights haven't been designed. They haven't been costed.
The policy itself won't change the settings in which we go about detailed design, consultation, and delivery, and budget and the like.
Councillor Stephen Mayne, you have a question?
A question for the CEO. So Councillor Diamati said that there were governance problems with the officer report effectively. I'd just like to ask the administration to respond as to whether they're comfortable with the governance of the officer recommendation in the body of the report.
I'll refer that question to the CEO.
We don't ordinarily put reports up in front of council where we've got concerns about governance. What I'm reading into the alternate motion is specific calling out, particularly in relation to item 3, around a requirement for us to actually bring out a specific report back to council around that consultation process.
I'd like to ask a question, if that's possible. With the proposed amendment, I'm a little bit confused about the request for a report and what impact that might have on the timing of the project that's already endorsed in the 2024 to 25 budget for this regional facility. I'll refer that to you, CEO, to answer my question.
No, happy to answer that question. I mean, obviously, by definition, it is another formal process that is inserted into the detailed design. So, it's a level of increased governance, if you like, for want of a better term. And it would require us to make sure that we do all of that consultation process and build that into our project management timelines, get that consultation done, bring it back to council in March, instead of starting the process, if you like, immediately.
Thank you for answering my question. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Yes, Councillor Anachem, your question?
I always remain open-minded. I listen to all comments and the debates and the questions. And I heard about the good governance and also the equity. And therefore, my question is, I noticed that the cover board is a late inclusion after those go out to public consultation many months ago. My question is the outdoor sporting facilities. Are there any other outdoor sporting facilities that would perhaps would be preferable or would love to have a cover? For example, netball, soccer, or even athletic track. So because it opened a floodgate for one particular sport. So I just wondering whether there's other outdoor sports that need covered as well. Increased percentage of participation from our community that will impact my decision making. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen, for the question. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. Look, the short answer to that is yes. I think if we looked at most sports, right up to and including AFL, undercover obviously enables greater levels of participation. So yes, there would be a range of different sports. Obviously, we can't give you the answer on exactly what all of those sports are, but I think I would point out that part of what the change has done is actually made an adjustment to specifically enable a covered bowling green, in this instance, off the back of an approach in relation to the availability of funding. So, in many respects, that's how this came about. It was about making sure that the policy that ultimately endorses is an enabling policy to be able to do that specific piece of work. If there were other pieces of work, we'd need to bring that back to council as well.
Do I have any speakers to the motion? Councillor Thomas Lightbody, what's your question?
I've got 2 questions. Sorry, I've just got 2 questions. They're just probably pretty easy clarifying questions. If we do pass the original report, this particular project would it have to come back to the next council for approval? That's my first question. And the second question is that subject to the same capital works prioritisation as other sporting infrastructure upgrades are.
Thank you. I'll refer the question to the CEO.
Yeah, thanks for the question, councillor. So ultimately, it will come down to budget and scope. Generally, as you know, on projects such as this, where we think there's a degree of community interest, which obviously there is with this particular project, or where we think there is scope change or significant budget increase, we would bring a report up to the council. But if it's a relatively straightforward one, we would brief the council on that, and if council requested us to bring a report up, we would do so. I missed the second part of your question, sorry, councillor.
Would the project be subject to the capital works prioritisation that other sporting infrastructure upgrades are?
Yeah, as you're aware, each year the council has a look at the overall capital works budget for any given year, and obviously that would determine what was allocated in future years from a budget perspective, but also recognising that once we move past certain parts of projects that go across multiple years, there's often little flexibility because we've already entered into contractual arrangements and the like.
Thank you. Do I have any speakers to the motion? Councillor Michelle Kleinert.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for the questions that you have asked, because it brings clarity in a very, very hard decision. As you can tell, we don't make decisions lightly. We do thrust it out and consider. There's two things that do stand out to me with all the questions, is that the CEO just said, and I'll quote, "This is an enabling policy." So that's what it's about. We've got really detailed into this one thing about bowls, and around the table, we all care about bowls. We all care about its future. That is without doubt. I'll go to the second point of going back to the policy, not what is before us, but if this falls down, it's going back to the original, the officer's report, 6.2.3, pending endorsement of facility standards, I believe this will come back still to council after the greater detail, after further consultation. But taking into account, this is a policy, it's much broader. It's about enabling. So hence, I'm not in agreement with this. When I look at interpreting, and we all interpret things differently. So as point 2 is interpreted in one way from Councillor Mayne, which I agree with Councillor Mayne, it's determined differently from Councillor Del Monte. So it's very hard, and we're really picking at things, but I am very confident that should this fall and we go back to the officer's report, we don't take these decisions lightly and frivolously, and it is about ultimately Manningham Bowls, not one club, but many people, many clubs, many stakeholders. And so that's why I don't support this, because I don't want to disable a policy. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne, you have a question?
I just want to follow up on Councillor Chen's precedent question. I noted Councillor Goff's comment about a Pandora's box being opened. I'm aware of indoor netball and indoor basketball. We've invested tens of millions in that over the years. I'm not aware of sort of covered cricket, tennis, football, soccer. I'm just wondering if the CEO could clarify his comment on the precedent question as to whether are there many other examples of sports in Manningham where there would be a debate about building a shade sail covered facility if we supported this policy recommended by the officers to the point that it would be a Pandora's box?
I'll ask the CEO for clarification for the question.
Yeah, certainly happy to provide the clarification. My point was there are plenty of sports that would be interested in undercover. Whether that elicits a debate within the community. I'm not sure we're necessarily anticipating the debate we had over this one, councillor. So I can't really answer that question as to whether there'd be controversy if there was a decision made, for instance, to put a tennis court undercover, which can be done. In terms of clarification, it was really about saying that there are a range of different options to cover sports from netball through to tennis.
Councillor Andrew Conlon.
I have a question.
Councillor Conlon, what's your question?
Councillor Chen also mentioned that this wasn't in the consultation document. My understanding was that the policy that went out to the community did mention the covered greens. So I'm just trying, could I clarify that? Because it was part of the consultation, the community consultation.
I'll ask Lee Robson, Director of Connected Communities, to answer that question.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Conlon. I believe the earlier draft may not have included the covered green option. If I recall, it came up specifically in the budget discussions. There has been some limited consultation with Manning and Bowles Group, but I think both the group and officers would agree that there's further consultation that could occur.
Thank you. Do we have any speakers to the motion? I just wanted to speak to the motion.
I had a question.
Oh, your
Madam
question?
Mayor.
Yep, Councillor Diamonte.
I just wanted to confirm that the officer's understanding is that this amendment does not disable the policy. This amendment still enables a covered green. It doesn't disable the policy.
What's your question there?
Am I right in understanding that this amendment does not disable the policy? It still enables a covered green to occur. I just want to get clarification from a previous question that was asked.
I'll refer the question to Director of Connected Communities, Lee Robson.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. The change from in the policy, as suggested by your alternate, is to change the wording on page 44 from one covered green in the municipality to be on a case-by-case basis. The words case-by-case basis are peppered throughout the policy, and it means that every proposal is then looked at on its merits. So yes, there is still some ability within the policy to be able to proceed with this. It probably indicates more that further information would be brought back to council in a very explicit way.
Do I have any further?
I move that the motion be put. Okay, I'll withdraw that. I'll withdraw that.
Do I have any further speakers to the motion?
Sorry, I have more questions.
To the amendment, sorry.
I'm really confused now because it says specifically in note 2 that the endorsement of this policy does not infer endorsement. If that doesn't infer endorsement, if the original policy is not endorsing the covered green, then this alternate motion is disendorsing it. If it did endorse it, this is effectively disendorsing it because it says it does not infer council endorsement. So let's move that out of the.
Perhaps I should clarify. It does not infer. What the amendment is trying to say is by endorsing this policy, it's not saying yes, we endorse the covered bowling green at this point.
Exactly.
It's saying it's in the policy as an enabling policy, but that we require further information to come back to council to make a decision on it.
Sorry, my question is to governance.
So your question, can you be really clear in your question, please, Councillor Conlon, so I can get it answered and we can move forward?
Note 2 says that the endorsement of this policy, so this is the alternate motion, it's saying the endorsement of this policy does not infer council endorsement of the provision of a covered bowling green. Therefore, my proposition is it's inferring that the adoption of this amendment will infer that the council does not endorse a covered bowling green.
Councillor Conlon, what is your clear question so I can get it answered?
I'm asking, is that What if it's so hard to interpret? Then I'd say it's poor governance. Can someone in governance explain to me how this still endorses a covered green?
I'll refer that question to the CEO.
Thank you for the question, councillor. My understanding of the intent behind item 2 is that it does, if you like, not automatically assume the provision of a covered bowling green in Manningham. And my interpretation of what Councillor Diamanti is looking for is that ultimately the final decision on council endorsement for the provision of a covered bowling green comes back to council.
If you would be comfortable, I can change those words to reflect the CEO's clarification.
I'll speak against it.
Councillors, I'm going
I
to
haven't spoken against it.
Do I have any speakers to the amendment? Do I have any speakers? I've already asked for speakers against
No, I was speaking against.
the amendment.
Yep. You didn't ask.
Can I?
I've
do I
only
have
asked
any
questions.
speakers against the amendment? I've lost track now. Councillor Cunningham, would you like to speak against the amendment?
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, I can give you a very pinpoint example of poor governance. We've got a motion in front of us that is not clear. We're getting now an interpretation that we think the intent is this, da-da-da-da-da. So firstly, this is not, this motion does not cut it. Secondly, in terms of more consultation, from the impression I get from the questions we had at the start, there's not going to be any change by March 25. We're going to get the same answer where it's not supported by everyone. We have to make a decision at some point. Are we going to go with a game-changing undercover facility or not? By adopting this motion, the alternative motion here, or amendment to the motion, we are effectively disendorsing, in my view, the idea of a covered green until at least March 25, and that's after a consultation process. Even if the next council then decides to go ahead, it's going to take another 6 months, 12 months, whatever. The council will have to make a decision. That has to be a report then. I don't think that report's going to be until June, July of next year. Then they're going to go through so we're already 12 months behind where we are now. At that point, Don Vale Bowls Club may say, like, look, this is not going to happen. We'll just get them to put in the lights and the green that they're committed to anyway, and yeah, we'll just give up on the idea, and that'll be a shame for every single bowler now and in the future. Make a decision for the community. Make a decision to endorse or not endorse. I don't know what we're doing now because we're not whatever, but it's not clear. And as I said, nothing's going to change between now and March. Thank you.
Question.
Councillor Goff, you have a question?
Madam Mayor, I'm very confused now because if we go back to the original motion, we are endorsing funding and building the covered bowling green. Is that correct? Because that's what I get from what he said.
So what we've got in the policy and in the motion and in the budget is the ability to shift what we've currently got in the capital program, which is to do synthetic and lights at Don Vale, and shift that funding and negotiate with Don Vale to look at a covered bowling green at Don Vale. That's what it gives us the capacity to do.
But I just heard it endorsed it by Councillor Conlon.
Sorry, clear on your
I can
question?
provide some clarity. It endorses the concept of a covered bowling green. The previous version did not have that capacity in it.
Second question. Did the original version have a statement to say that it would not endorse a covered bowling green in those strict terms? Because whether it has endorsing a covered in its policy makes no difference as to whether you're going to go back and look at something.
The original policy did not have a exclusion of covered bowling greens.
Okay, so So it didn't, it was neutral.
All right, councillors, I'm going to actually ask that we put this to a vote. I can see that it's difficult and there's lots to say. I was going to speak to it, but I think we've come to the point where we need to just put it to a vote. Therefore, all those in favour for the amendment, I'll ask you to put up your hand. That is Councillor Anna Chen, Councillor Deirdre Diamonte, Councillor Jeff Goff and Councillor Laura Mayne. All those against the amendment. That is Councillor Andrew Conlon, that is Councillor Carly Lang, that is Councillor Michelle Kleinert, that is Councillor Thomas Lightbody, that is Councillor Stephen Mayne. That is not carried.
Mayor, I'd like to move an amendment.
I go back to the original motion, the substantive motion, where I asked for speakers for, I asked for speakers against. We ended up with the amendment. We've debated that, and now I ask for speakers to. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
A very simple, small amendment, which has been distributed to the councillors. I'm moving an amendment, which has been distributed to the councillors so that they know about it. And it's that we endorse the policy with the following amendment. Quote, the installation of white picket fences at turf cricket ovals are endorsed as council policy where council supports the investment and club user groups contribute up to 20% of the capital cost.
As a mover for amendment, do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Just briefly, Mayor. So our policy document is silent at the moment on the question of sort of heritage white picket fences at particularly cricket, but it can be any ovals, and they are increasingly popping up around Melbourne. If you look at La Trobe University, or I was out at Narre Warren on Sunday, or Melbourne University, or Port Melbourne Football Club, it's quite common. And we had a budget submission from Fitzroy Doncaster Cricket Club, the only premier club in Manningham, for council to install a white picket fence at Shrams number 1, which is our sort of premier facility right here in our main precinct. Unfortunately, the response from the officers was that it's not compliant with policy. So if there's no policy to even have a discussion about putting in a white picket fence, this amendment fixes that in hopefully a very elegant way by simply saying that it is policy to support white picket fences at turf cricket ovals, and there's only 4 in Manningham, so it's not synthetic, so it's a small number. And it's only going to happen if the user clubs put up 20%, and I've been told it'll cost about $100,000, and if council supports the investment. So we're in full control. Absolutely a budget decision. But next time a club comes along and asks us to do it, the answer won't be, it's not in the policy. The answer will be a budget discussion from whether we're prepared to spend, say, $80,000 and then show us your money, come up with $20,000. So this very minor amendment won't commit us to spend any money, keeps us up with contemporary premium regional facilities, and introduces a 20% club funding where at the moment fencing is 100% council funded. So, otherwise all clubs might just say, well, you pay for fences now as policy, do all of us. So this wording is designed to limit it to turf and put in a small club user group contribution that will sort out the pretenders from the serious players. We may finish up with one at Doncaster, possibly Don Vale, as the second biggest turf sub-district club. But we may get nothing, but at least we then have a contemporary policy which can deal with a budget submission from our biggest, longest-serving, most respected sporting club in the cricket fraternity right here on the council precinct.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Thomas Lightbody, did you want to speak to the amendment? Did I have any speakers against the amendment? Councillor Anna Chen.
It all comes back to the good governance. So I am deeply troubled by not getting enough information, by not getting assessment of the impact of our of our budget. Of course, I know that Councilman will argue that we have a a lot of cash in reserve or that we can spend a lot more on our sporting facilities. But I'm very troubled. And by the last minute, 20%, why not 30%? Why not 50%? Why not 100% contribution? I'm deeply troubled. I cannot just support this amendment. And also, I'm very mindful that, Councilman, we are the custodian of ratepayers' money. So I really cannot support the another amendment by just contributing a bit more or perhaps in the policy without actually going out for public consultation or have professional endorsement by or even a report from our officers. So I really cannot support. I'm so sorry.
Do I have any speakers to the amendment? Councillor Lightbody, your question?
Thank you. If we did endorse this amendment, does that mean that council will fund the said project, or does it just mean it's an option in the inventory, subject to future consultations, budget discussions, and everything else that's the same as other infrastructure types that are listed in the policy?
I'll refer your question to the CEO.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I think as Councillor Stephen Mayne outlined, it would be subject to budget. We don't have any projects like this in our current capital program.
Do I have any speakers? I have had a speaker against. Do I have any speakers to the amendment? Do I have any speakers for the amendment?
Well, no, on the amendment.
Yep. Do I have any speakers to the amendment? Yeah, that's like two, as in on the amendment.
Not for it.
Two.
Thank you very much. Well, what's that? No, I'm not going to sit on the fence.
Your time started, Councillor Goff.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll ask for an extension then. Basically, this is a motion that is really, really nice. And if we had lots of money and we could spend it on everything, it would look very pretty, jolly ho, as we go out and play our cricket. However, I do believe that that pickets have been taken off a lot of ovals, especially if they play football on the ovals, because pickets are very dangerous for people to fall onto or be pushed into, because they spear people. You've seen those beautiful picket fences, haven't you, around the place with all little V's on it? And just imagine a footballer being pushed over to that and on top. So we're going to have to be covering our lovely pickets that are painted white every year with the cucumber sandwiches. So, you know, sports are funded, and some sports are funded really well. And let me tell you, sports that actually have people that put the turf down on their wicket, a live sport, costs ratepayers a lot of money. So we've got sports that do have money and got lots of money spent on them because they cost a lot of money to have turf wickets, and I believe that we should have turf wickets in the area, but it is a huge cost. To share these out and to have a visual of a picket, well, I don't know that that is the best use of hard-earned ratepayers' money. I agree with Councillor Chen. We need functional fences that are safe. If anyone wants to make it look better, perhaps we say, yes, you can pay for this enhancement for a fence at 100% if it is safe. Because we're being asked on a whim to spend money on doing something that is an issue that means that if we sound the actual thing, if they're prepared to pay 20%, we're going to be sort of compelled to put the 80% in to build it. So we've got functional things. I don't agree with this last minute. When we talk about good governance and everything else, these people that talk about good governance seem to wave it
Point of order.
they want to.
Mayor, my point of order is
Councillor
that,
Stephen Mayne,
is
what's
that the
your point of
councillor
order?
used the term whim and the councillor talked about poor governance. And as I explained in my introduction, we received a budget submission requesting this. And I'd just like the councillor to withdraw the suggestion that it's poor governance or a whim from a councillor to propose something put up in a formal written budget submission and presented in person in this chamber by the very well-respected president of the said club.
Madam Mayor,
Hang on,
well, it's
hang
not-
on, councillor Goff. Councillor Goff, please let me make a decision. Thank you. Yes, we have had this budget submission come to us many times. And yes, this amendment has not been flagged on this policy a long time before. So I'm just going to say, let's not use words like whim. Let's say we've had this request, and maybe I'm getting a little bit tired myself. We have had this request before. We've had it debated through a budget. We have now had it brought up while we're looking at a policy. And I believe we just need to get on with making some decisions, but without using words that are going to antagonise. So could I please ask, do I have any other speakers to the motion? Otherwise, I'm going to put it to the amendment to a vote. Do I have any other speakers to the amendment? Therefore, I put the amendment as read to a vote. All those in favour of the inclusion of the white picket fence policy addition, please put up your hand. That is Councillor Stephen Mayne. That is Councillor Laura Mayne. All those against the amendment? That is Councillor Thomas Lightbody. That is Councillor Michelle Kleinert. That is Councillor Carly Lang. That is Councillor Jeff Goff. That is Councillor Deirdre Diamonte. That is Councillor Andrew Conlon. That is Councillor Anna Chen. That is not carried. We are now back to the substantive outdoor sports infrastructure and allocations policy. Councillor, it has been moved, it has been seconded, it has had speakers against. Do I have any other speakers for the original outdoor infrastructure and allocations policy, the substantive motion? Thank you. Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Mayor, I think this is a good policy. I think the officers have done well to bring the two policies together. We dealt with these two policies in the first or second meeting of the council term, so to deal with these policies twice in a term is a truckload of work, and it is a very complicated area. There's a lot of balancing acts. You can get some emotion in there, but overall, I think that Emma Mitchie and Rob Morton and Lee's team have consulted very diligently. The community's had a lot of input, and it provides a clear framework on both allocations and infrastructure. I personally am most excited about the move on electronic scoreboards from 100% club, which left us with a hodgepodge of subscale poor designs, to 50-50, that we've recognised that electronic scoreboards are not a luxury, but they are a common thing, and that we will now have influence on standard design. We'll be able to open them up for community messaging on dog walking and things like that. And that's just one of many great changes that I think have been introduced in this policy. We've got a bit sidetracked on some specific issues, but we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that the overall policy, I think, is something that will stand the council in good stead. And should be supported by us councillors in appreciation of the work of the officers, the debate around the table, the input from the community.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Thank you, Councillor Diamonte.
I do support what Councillor Stephen Mayne said. It is a very good policy and there's a lot of detail in it. It's very comprehensive, and for the vast majority of it, has had excellent consultation, so I do commend the team. I am disappointed that the amendment wasn't carried because it will make it very difficult for me to approve it, Madam Mayor. Without the words in there changed to consider these projects on a case-by-case basis by council, we are committing ourselves to a considerable expenditure without, to my mind, and I've said it before, the due diligence on our costs. Councillor Kleinert said quite well that this is ultimately about Manningham and the Manningham bowling community, but we're proceeding with a policy where we haven't had consultation with the Manningham bowling community. So I'm disappointed that I'm now in a position where it's going to be very difficult for me to endorse this policy.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. Do I have any speakers for the motion? Do I have any speakers to the motion? Councillors, I will speak to the motion then. I just would like to say that our last round, so there's been the the 2 rounds of community consultation, and any changes that we've had according to that first round of consultation was put out in the next draft, which then went out to community consultation. So that's sort of the process that goes. You have community consultation, you receive feedback back, you then make changes, the draft goes back out to community consultation, and then you have it back again. So I'm comfortable that there's been that process done with due diligence. I note that from that last feedback that we received submissions regarding lengths of tenure, we received submissions regarding the allocations of the scoring criteria and acknowledging user groups. We had the consultation and the addition of officers cross-checking final numbers. We had the change on we've received feedback on procedures for pre-season activities. We had feedback on personal trainers and groups. We had clarification on facilities and estimates of funding that had been put in with groups. We had feedback regarding clarifying the stance about retrospective works. We had the feedback and clarifying that some of reclassifying sports fields and pavilions based on current usage. And we had the feedback around changes to a regional facility standards for netball and for lawn bowls. I note that the policy is a enabling policy. It gives the provision for consultation to occur on all of the parts of the policy. And in particular, I note the topic that has taken our time and our consideration and the difficult decisions that we've all had to make around the table. I would like to commend Manningham Bowls for coming together as a group, even though they have different needs, priorities, and asks, and that this policy enables continued consultation, noting further consultation on their asks and the impact and the inclusion of accessibility for all. Therefore, councillors, I would support our outdoor sports and infrastructure allocations policy to commend the consultation that has occurred and to continue further consultation on its policy items. Thank you. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? I will ask the mover if the mover would like to close.
Yeah, I will. I think we are at the right spot, and I know the focus has been on bowls, but I really appreciate the officers, as I said at the start, putting the work in, consulting with clubs. We have done a lot of consulting, and we can't please everyone all the time. Not all those respondents were happy, but it is about ultimately participation, and I think this decision tonight will improve our participation, will improve the mental health, the physical health, and the community connectedness that sports brings. So I completely endorse the policy, and thank you again, officers, for putting the work in.
Thank you. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour of the outdoor sports infrastructure policy and infrastructure and allocations policy? All those in favour? That's Councillor Stephen Mayne, Councillor Thomas Lightbody, Councillor Michelle Kleinert, Councillor Laura Mayne, Councillor Carly Lang, Councillor Jeff Goff, Councillor Andrew Connellan and Councillor Anna Chen. All those against? That's Councillor Deirdre Diamonte. That's been carried. Thank you. Item 12, City Services. Item 12.1, Concrete Maintenance Work and Contract Panel Award Recommendation. I will just ask for the gallery to be quiet, thank you. So I will, if you would like to leave, please take the opportunity to leave. Thank you. And take your props with you, please.
Someone need to help?
Councillors, we're just pausing the meeting while the gallery takes their props with them. Okay, so I will start that item 12.1. Again, we have our Concrete Maintenance Works Contract Panel Award Recommendation, MP 001475. Do I have a mover of the motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Jeff Goff. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mayor. Look, I love the smell of a big contract award transparently done in the evening, and this concrete one is a good one. So like wanting meaty planning decisions coming to council, any contract which is $2.75 million a year spend is a lot of ratepayers' money, and it's best deciding those contracts with full sunlight. So we went to market in May for our contract. We'd previously been spending $2 million a year. We had 21 submissions, and we've awarded 6 concrete firms. I won't name them all, but they're in the report for aficionados if you want to read about them, for a 3-year contract with a potential another 3-year extensions. The cost is up 17%. So it is just an absolute example of cost of doing business, cost of construction is going up. Extra $750,000 a year on concrete at council of ratepayers' money just to stay in business on the maintenance of our concrete footpaths and drains and things like that. So this is the real reality. When we say things are getting more expensive, you know, this is it. It's good that it's been done transparently. I'd like to thank particularly Molly, who was our head of procurement until recently. I suspect this might have been one of the last contracts she was involved in. We have excellent contract procurement systems in Manningham. I love the transparency, and good luck to all the winning tenderers, and thanks to the officers for running a good, transparent process.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Jeff Goff, would you like to speak to the motion? No. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any speakers for the motion? If there are no other speakers, Councillor Stephen Mayne, did you want to close? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour for the motion? And that's carried unanimously. Item 12.2, end of 2023 to 24 financial year capital works report. Do I have a mover of the motion? Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Andrew Conlon. Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, because it's a good news story, and I'll be very quick. It's the end of financial year, for 23-24, Capital Works report. Our target total capital infrastructure spend, we hit about 45.09 million, 91% of our budget, forecasted budget, which I think is an excellent end to the year. A total of 183 infrastructure projects were designed, constructed or otherwise had expenditure allocated to them over the course of the financial year, with 159 of those projects finalised, or in the case of a multi-year project. So that equates to a completion rate of 87%, which I think is quite stellar when you consider it is still not necessarily easy getting contracts and contractors, costs, as we've seen in the previous amendment. But I want to commend the officers under the City Services Directorate through our CEO. Well done, because it's capital works. We put down a project that is getting more aggressive, more bigger. We are being leaner and meaner, but we're getting things done, and that's what it's about. Those core, the capital works, it's all about that core, the core stuff that means local government, and it's a really good outcome. So I just want to thank and commend the officers for the hard work over the last year, and of course each quarter the reports come, so hence we get them now, even though it was right up to June 30 of this year. So hope that we'll endorse it nice and smoothly, quickly, without debate. That being said, within time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Councillor Andrew Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, yeah, I'd love to. Just for a tick, it's great to see all the pictures of all the work. It's really good demonstration of how much work we're actually doing in Manningham. The most boring picture, but exciting at the same time, is the drainage pictures, which are great to see that we're trialling different ways of doing drainage, make sure that we can make sure that we get rid of water and do it well. So congratulations to the team on a good capital works project. There's some great pictures of playgrounds that we've got a lot. There's heaps of playgrounds in there that I can see that we've got great pictures of that we've done up. There's started work on the Shrams Visitors Complex, Museum Complex. It's heaps and heaps. It's amazing. So, again, congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any speakers for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yeah, I agree with the two previous speakers. It is a good report. Overall, the program is tracking along well. My only quibble with the specifics of one particular project is it talks about a capital prepayment of $3.2 million to the Department of Transport and Planning for upcoming works at the intersection of Tram Road and Merlin Street. So this traffic light proposal on a state government road has been in the capital program for the entire 4 years of this council term. It keeps getting delayed. The cost of it keeps going up. And the idea that we're sending a cheque for $3.2 million to the state government of ratepayers' money, and develop a contribution element as well, I will acknowledge that, for them to build a set of traffic lights on their road, when another set of traffic lights have just been built down the road at Applewood, I think is a waste of money. And I would love to see some passion about the ratepayers' money being spent like this, and a really good investigation as to whether we could save this money. It would pay for 2 sets of covered greens. It would do kilometres of white picket fences. It would be an enormous save. It would pay for a museum at Trams. That $3.2 million that we are sending to the state government as a prepayment, because they require us to pay up front before they actually put the traffic lights in, it seems. So if we can get out of this commitment, I think it'd be a great achievement. I won't be here in the next term. I'm putting it on the record tonight that I think it's a waste of money, of the ratepayers' money, and we should do everything we possibly can to save this $3.2 million. We don't need a set of traffic lights here. and redirect the money to more needy local causes rather than gold-plating a state government road.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? If there are no other speakers to the motion, Councillor Michelle Kleinert, would you like to close? If you would not like to close, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 13, Experience and Capability. Item 13.1, Gender Equality Act Progress Report for 2023 update. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Councillor Laura Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So for a little bit of context, this progress report was submitted to the Commissioner for Gender Equality in the Public Sector, which is a legislative requirement of Manningham Council under the Gender Equality Act 2020. So just a bit more context, this reporting considers 7 indicators, including gender pay equality, gender composition of all levels of the workforce, gender composition of governing bodies, such as our governing body, workplace sexual harassment, recruitment and promotion, gender work segregation, and leave and flexibility. A big step that we have taken includes the establishment of our Gender Equality Steering Committee in March 2023, which is a group that provides strategic leadership and direction to the organisation regarding all things diversity, inclusion and gender equality. Overall, reading through this report, I commend the organisation for its transparency and accountability to improve this area and continue to progress. But some of the figures that I was pretty happy reading, I'll pick out a few. So first of all, women have tended to be slightly over 50% of our recruits in 2021 and 2023. In terms of our workforce, we do still have 62% women and 38% men. However, 44% of leadership positions are men compared to 56 being women. I think I got that right. But we are catching up. So in 2021, 70% of all promotions were women, and in 2023, 100%, with 67 of those being in higher levels of the organisation. Pretty good. I also think it's worth commending the leadership team for the great staff survey responses included in the report. So we had 84% of respondents agreed that the organisation uses inclusive and respectful language, and 85% feeling culturally safe at work, and 81% who felt the work was allocated fairly regardless of gender. So overall, I'd just like to thank the officers and the organisation for all this work in this area and for their commitment to improve constantly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas Lightbody, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly. I'd like to support everything Councillor Laura Mayne said. I think we're doing some great work in this area. I think this report outlines that, and I think where we've got to in terms of the level of quality and gender impact assessments that we're doing, we're always improving them, and I think we're really leading in that area. And I think I would like to congratulate the majority female directors in the room as well on that. And yeah, councillors too, but we already know this. The people in the camera can't see that there's only in this big decision-making body, this centre of power in Melbourne, that is the small city council of Manningham. There's 6 males in this room and 11 females. I think that is something that is to be congratulated. And I think everyone is doing a good job regardless. And I think we've got lots of good work to come, and I look forward to hopefully seeing future progress reports on the other side of this council election.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers to the motion, for the motion? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Just picking up on the councillor numbers, I do think it is noteworthy that we've had 3 majority female councils in a row, 5-4. I was in the one before that, which was 7 men and 2 females, and it was toxic, some toxic masculinity on display. So I do hope, as the only councillor retiring at this election that we know about, and I hope all 8 of you get back, and then it won't matter who gets elected, we'll still have a majority of females in the next council. So I hope we can get to 4 in a row. I think it really does help with the tone and sets the message from the top, which is great. So thanks for the report, and I think we're doing well, as Councillor Laura Mayne said.
Do I have any others? Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? With no other speakers to the motion, Councillor Laura Mayne, would you like to close? Then I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14, Chief Executive Officer. Item 14.1, Review of Council Expenses Policy. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Del Monte. Councillor Stephen Mayne, did you want to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, so we haven't reviewed our expenses policy since 2020, so it's due for review, and there are a few tweaks, nothing particularly substantial, some additional health and wellbeing support being provided, mayoral development opportunities, additional clause regarding the mayoral chain, security and storage, and further guidance on external hospitality claims. But overall, I would comment that I don't think I've ever seen a group of councillors so materially underspend their expenses budget as this group. I think the total save against budget would be definitely well into six figures over the 4-year term, so I haven't seen any rorting and very, very modest claiming of the expenses. In terms of the transparency, it's very, very transparent, including the CEO's in the quarterly reports. If I was being a total nitpicking perfectionist on transparency, I'd probably include councillor access to newspaper subscriptions as an expense. I know it's shared across the management and stuff, but that, we do get the benefit of that. Some those who choose to, and if that's the best I can come up with. So it's a good policy, and it's also important that sometimes you get a bit nervous about reviewing sort of an important governance policy 6 weeks out from an election. So it's good that this is going to be reviewed again in September 2026, 2 years into the term. So it's not as if we're set and forget for the next council. Before the halfway mark, it'll be reviewed again. So if anything comes up. So it's good to get it done now and then do another review in 2 years just to make sure it's fit for purpose.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? Councillor, that was Councillor Deirdre Del Monte. It is getting late. Do I have any other speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Mayne, did you want to close? No, so I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.2, Council Meeting Schedule. Do I have a mover?
I move that. Madam Mayor, I move as on the paper.
Thank you, Councillor Jeff Goff. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Andrew Conlon. Councillor Jeff Goff, did you want to speak to the motion?
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Andrew Conlon, did you want to speak? With no speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.3, Appointment of Authorised Officers, Planning and Environment Act 1987. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen. Councillor Laura Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Anna Chen. With no speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.4, Informal Meeting of Councillors. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Chen. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Andrew Conlon. Councillor Anna Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I just want to move the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Anna Chen. Councillor Andrew Conlon, would you like to speak? With no speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.5, Documents for Sealing. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Del Monte.
I move that the recommendation be adopted with the addition of the following agreement: Community Services Lease, Council and Pines Learning Incorporated, premises Part Manningham City Square, 687 Doncaster Road, Doncaster.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Thomas Lightbody. Councillor Deirdre Del Monte, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Lightbody. With no speakers, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 15, Urgent Business. There are no items for urgent business this evening. Item 16, Councillor Reports and Question Time. Councillors, would anyone like to provide a report or raise a question? Councillor Laura Mayne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was so exciting. We had the official opening of Hepburn Park on the 18th of August, just a few weeks ago. It was a really lovely celebration of what was over 10 years of work by the council officers, and it really showed the importance of some great long-term strategic planning, where we identified that Doncaster needed some more open space, and the council worked really hard, and we finally have got that outcome, which was truly amazing. And I'd also love to thank Teddy, who gave his idea, who presented his idea to council a few months ago of Donut Day, which we implemented at the opening, which was such a success. So thank you so much, Teddy. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Councillors, would anyone else like to provide a report? That's Councillor Michelle Kleiner.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, glad I don't have jet lag, but want to say that it was wonderful to be with the Macedonian group of Manningham for their Macedonian National Day earlier in August. And just recognising that though it was a celebration of their National Day at the Venator Club, of which we were invited, there were Australians, Albanians, Italians, Greeks, Germans, Lebanese, Chinese and Croatians, amongst many others. So it was purely a multicultural celebration of a day that's very important to the Macedonian community of Manningham. And finally, Madam Mayor, I thought I'd share this encouraging news that it might be passed on to the organisation through the director. I would believe that would be Lee Robson. Recently, some traders in Jackson Court were contacted that the power was going to be turned off on their shops because of some works being done on Doncaster Road with no compensation. In a cost of living crisis, it's very difficult for people running business to have their business shut down for a whole day. So in their dilemma, they made contact with one of the staff members that they have very good contact with, who would be Andy Way, and talked about what that was and what it meant. And the fact that, how do we locate generators in such a short amount of time, the cost to that. The answer was, let me get back to you. In a very short amount of time, an officer from Manningham, Andy Way, got back to the business owners and said, if the power is switched off in the morning, contact us. We have generators at the depot and we'll be able to supply them to you. And don't worry, we've got it in hand. And the trader just said, it's just, they are a resident of Manningham, and many of them in that area are Manningham residents, and they are just very thankful for that out-of-the-box, instant, no hassle, let me work it out for you, and it's constant. And I just think that, Madam Mayor, I just wanted it raised because often we get complaints, we get people, and sometimes we look so much at the complaints, but we forget the great stories that are happening every day, that when they get fed back, I think it's wonderful to bring it to the council table for not only our fellow councillors, but the officers to be communicated to. Thank you.
Councillors, do I have anyone else like to provide a report or a question? Councillor Anna Chen.
Just briefly about Hepburn Reserve, and I think that Hepburn Reserve is the outcome of 20 years of planning of Doncaster Hill strategy. And I still remember I attended the initial in-person community consultation in November 2019. And nearly 5 years on, I was greeted and reunited by residents who attended the 2019 in-person consultation. Sadly, some had left us forever, and it was quite an emotional reunion with tears and laughter. But on a positive note, Hepburn Reserve is a great public facility, and I love the colorful flower structures that glow gracefully at night. And next time when anyone wants to visit Doncaster Hill, do not forget to visit Hepburn Reserve. Another report is about Victoria Street Play Space that opened on Saturday, 24th of August, last Saturday. I visited the play space very early in the morning to beat the crowd, and I play some of the of the facilities, for example, the towers, the slides, and there are also new water features and a lot of swim options. So I encourage every family with children just to come along to enjoy the new improved facilities. So yeah, you will be very excited, and I don't think the age matters, so everyone are welcomed, and have a go.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillors, would anyone else like to provide a report? Councillor Deirdre Diamonte.
Thank you, Mayor. I know you're aware that the North East links are ramping up along the freeway and consequently along the Coonung Creek Trail. The length of the Coonung Creek Trail between Bulleen Park and Ride and Doncaster Road is now closed to the public. All the trees along the Sandwell along that stretch have been removed. I took myself on a tour along there last week and it was very, very confronting. And the impact is huge. I do want to thank our officers for their ongoing advocacy. Sincerely want to thank them on their ongoing advocacy to the project on minimising tree loss along residential fence lines in that area. I understand that thanks to the advocacy of this council, the gum trees behind 105 to 113 Willow Bend may be saved, and this is a really good outcome. However, there are some other well-established gum trees along residential fences of 91 Willow Bend that now may be removed to accommodate a work staging ground, and I just encourage our officers and CEO to continue to advocate to the project to look at opportunities to retain these mature trees, particularly if the proposal is to remove them just to accommodate temporary works such as a staging site. I also want to thank the officers for their advocacy to NELP to open parts of that Coonung Creek Trail, particularly between 91 Willow Bend and Marjorie Close. For those of you that don't know, this closure adds up to 1.5 kilometre diversion for walkers or bicyclists wanting to go along there to access the Estelle Street Bridge to cross the freeway. I think this is unacceptable, particularly the children that use that path to get to Bellevue Primary on the other side of the freeway. And thank you to our resident Peter Roddick for his advocacy on this matter. We all know that this is not our project, but I do believe that we've got such an important role to protect our residents as much as we can from the impact during construction, and I want to sincerely thank our officers and our CEO for the great work they do in this space.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. Councillors, any other reports? Councillor Jeff Goff.
Yeah, thank you very much, and you must have been rung up by the same people as I was, because that is an issue that I was going to raise tonight, and I'm glad it has been raised with the closure of that particular lineal path, and moreover, the effects of the long-term closure of that, which is going to be a number of years before any sort of path opens up there. And if it is a thoroughfare, and I want to know whether we've had any formal complaints, and this is to be a report. I don't want to know now, but I do get something back to us as councillors with regard to there, and I assume that it's just recently been shut, so there could be more coming in on that regard. But with the effect that it does have of getting to school and crossing the bridge across the freeway, now I assume at some stage that bridge is also going to need to be pulled down and rebuilt, because if the freeway's a lot wider, that bridge isn't going to do it either. So there will be, for quite a number of years, quite a lot of amenity lost. And in terms of the fact that Bulleen does not have a primary school, they're all missing from there. Bellevue is the closest primary school, and again, because of its location right at the edge of the freeway, it's extremely difficult to actually get there by motor vehicle, let alone impossible to get there by foot. So what are North East Link doing for pedestrian traffic? And I know there won't be some, from probably down where the bus exchange is and across the freeway over to the other side in a pedestrian sense. How easy is that for people? And then I suppose at the coming up here, because the issue is at the moment between High Street and Bulleen Road, that whole length of pedestrian path, it becomes the issue. And I think the other issues have been raised by Councillor Diamonte. But if we can have an update, perhaps going into some sort of presentation to councillors and SBS. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Councillors, do I have any other reports or questions? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
A quick football report and then a question. So it was most of the YJFL grand finals on Sunday. Great privilege for Manningham to have 4 of our reserves chosen to host 3 games each: Zerbies, Warrandyte, Bulleen Park and Shrams. So we absolutely punch above our weight in being a preferred destination for the biggest football league in the country, with 10,000 players choosing to host a large percentage of their finals in Manningham. Congratulations to the Park Orchards under-14 boys team, which won the premiership. There will be 4 premiership games next Sunday in the youth for the Park Orchards, Bull and Templestowe in the youth boys, youth girls Warrandyte in Div 1, that's the highest league. Warrandyte girls are great at football, and youth girls 2, Park Orchards. We'd also like to commiserate with Templestowe Footy Club, which lost in the first week of the finals, and wish Park Orchards the best of luck in their Div 1 grand final in Boronia on September 14 to get back into Premier Division in the Eastern Footy League, the biggest senior league in the country, and also to Donvale, which in Div 3 has a grand final out at Boronia on September 7 as well. My question for the CEO is as follows. The so-called CEO role for the upcoming City of Manningham elections closed earlier this month. Could the CEO advise how many electors are on the CEO role for the upcoming election and how this compares with the 2020 election? What steps were taken to encourage non-resident property owners and occupiers to enrol to vote, as is their right under the Local Government Act, in addition to the regular voters, the Manningham residents who are on the VEC and AEC rolls and therefore are automatically on the roll for council elections?
Thank you for your question. I'll ask the CEO to answer.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I might refer this to the Manager of Integrity, who has a much greater mind and level of knowledge in this space than I do.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your question, Councillor Mayne. In terms of the CEOs list for 2024, we have 209 ratepayers who submitted a successful application to vote in the council elections and who are now on the CEOs list. As you would be aware, there have been some legislation changes in recent years, and only those ratepayers who were automatically entitled to be on the roll in 2024 were owner ratepayers who had applied to be on the roll for 2020, and that was 124 people who automatically were enrolled. In terms of a comparison with what happened in 2020, there were 4,828 ratepayers on the roll in 2020 who were not Manningham residents and therefore not on the VEC roll. So out of that 4,828, 124 of those were applicant voters. So the remaining voters were automatically entitled as they were previously on the 2016 roll. Further changes to the legislation has meant that those who were not on the roll in 2016 also had to apply to be on the roll. So in terms of what we did to support the community in raising awareness around the opportunity to apply to be on the roll, we sent letters or emails to over 6,000 people to direct mail them to let them know that they were no longer automatically entitled to vote, but they could apply to be on the roll as a ratepayer. So we did this over a period of 3 weeks with all of the emails and letters being sent out by the end of May. And we also created an online form to make it easier for people to apply, which was really well received. It also helped us in terms of processing the applications. We provided some additional information on our website, and there were also a number of social media posts in the weeks prior to the close of the roll to encourage those people who were eligible to apply to be on the voters roll for the CEOs list. What we did well and what we did differently to a lot of other councils is that we not only contacted those people who were under specific sections of the Act that we were required to contact, we also contacted those people who had an optional right to apply that we didn't need to contact directly. So we went above and beyond what was expected to encourage people to apply to be on the voters roll.
Thank you for that detailed response. Councillors, would anyone else like to provide a report or raise a question? Thank you, Councillor Andrew Connell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Councillor Laura Main and I had the privilege the other night of celebrating Doncaster Hockey Club's 50th anniversary, which was quite a milestone. And there were some really great stories about one guy who so one of the initial sort of organisers went around to a primary school and just said, the Olympics had just been on, if you want to go to the Olympics, join hockey. So a whole lot of kids turned up, and he told the story how the next week there's about 100 kids from that primary school turned up on the Saturday. Next week about 50, next week about 25, and maybe that 25 or 10 or so end up keeping on with it. But they were really great stories. And I didn't know that initially it was at Timber Ridge, the hockey club, and then they were in the middle of the athletics tracks on George Street on a gravel pitch, which was actually much better than, you wouldn't think gravel's good, but it's really fine gravel, but it's much better than a Timber Ridge where the ball would actually sink in sometimes and they couldn't find the ball, so they had to give up the game. So that was a pretty funny story. And I didn't know also that down at Mullum, we had the first synthetic pitch in the southern hemisphere, I think. I think that's what they said. Like, that was an envisionary council. So congratulations on tonight passing this sports and infrastructure policy, because that's the sort of stuff that, is amazing. So, and we should be really proud of. And then, we've Olympians have been, a number of Olympians have come through that club, and they're a great community. It was, I guess, the sense of community was amazing there. Brings me to my question. There's floodlights down there, and luckily they're going to be upgraded to LEDs at some point. In June of last year, there was a fire that was generated by blowing of some of those floodlights, one of those poles, and we've done some investigation, is my understanding, and they can't really track down the cause. But it's because the fire's likely to happen on a high heat light that's not LED, that's halogen, and high current, high heat.
Thank you, Councillor Conlon. That's your 2 minutes.
Can I please?
Just finish your...
Okay, I will finish. I'm really concerned about the bushfire risk, and can we look at clearing all the trees around those lights until they get upgraded to LEDs, please?
Thank you. We'll note that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, would anyone else like to provide a report or raise a question? If not, I will. I would like to congratulate all our Civic Ward recipients. We had a fantastic Manningham Civic Wards evening the other night, and we should be so proud of the volunteerism in Manningham. We have the largest volunteerism in Victoria, and our Civic Awards was a testament to the humbleness, to the dedication, and to the service to our community. I would also like to provide you with some exciting news about our own officer Olympian, even though it's not an Olympian, but Helen Napier has returned from competing in the World Triathlon Standard Duathlon Championships for 2024 in Townsville last week. Helen represented Australia in her age group and participated in 2 events as part of this competition. Helen competed in the Standard Duathlon 10K run and then 40K bike and then 5K run event on Sunday the 18th in August, followed by the Cross Duathlon event on Thursday the 22nd, which was a 6K trail run, 20-kilometre mountain bike and then 3.2K trail run. I am pleased to announce that Helen managed to finish in the Standard Duathlon 17th in the world for her division and 5th place in the world in the Cross Duathlon. I would ask councillors if we could congratulate our officer, Helen Napier. We really do have an Olympian amongst us. Thank you, councillors. That's my report. No other reports? Item 17, confidential reports. Do I have a mover? Councillor Michelle Kleinert.
That council closed the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(1) and 66(2)(a) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the following item, item 17.1, partial acquisition of property.
Do I have a seconder to the motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you. I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried. We will now be closing the meeting to the members of the public and end the live stream to consider the confidential report. Thank you for joining us for the meeting this evening.